Chapter 231. But it's more comfortable here. 5. Cal immediately started to move in order to continue this good start. He headed out of the small yard in front of the inn entrance. One of the neighborhood grandmas looked toward Cal and the old inn with curiosity. "Did you buy this inn?" "Yes, grandmother." The old woman looked at the handsome, red-haired young man with satisfaction and worry. "This is a good location, but it is very old." "Oh, and it doesn't look like you have heard the story about this place. The owner used to run a gambling ring until he fled with his money." "I heard about it." The young man hesitated for a moment before continuing to speak with a vigorous expression. "But shouldn't it work out if I work hard? I have many people working with me. All of us are planning to work hard as if we are living a new life, so please take good care of us." "Agu, you are such a good talker." The young man's positive demeanor made the old woman start to smile and nod her head. "Of course, us new neighbors should look after each other. My husband runs the bakery in the next alley. Come to our shop if you need bread." "Yes, ma'am, thank you very much." The old woman received the "thank you" from the young man holding 2 kittens as she headed toward the alley with her bakery. A nice young man moved in. It was good news for the old woman. Cal finally lifted his head up once the old woman was no longer visible. The door slightly opened at that moment and someone started to speak. "Our hope and adventure-loving inn's goal is to provide warm meals and a relaxing room at a cheap cost for all travelers." "Got it? We understand." "Yes, sir," someone asked, and others energetically responded back. "And our hope and adventure-loving inn also seeks to backstab the bad guys, while our adventures will consist of taking their stuff." "Got it. We will remember it deep in our bones." Yes, sir, no matter what you say, yes, sir." Cal started to frown. The bandit leader who was coming out of the door flinched and started to shake. "Tell everyone to work quietly. Rumors spread before the rats and the birds know about it. Don't you know about that?" 1-0, of course. The bandit leader quickly came out of the door and closed it. The sounds of the people inside could no longer be heard once he closed the door. "Hey, clean the window properly. Make sure there isn't a single speck of dust. Each speck is a single white glove." The energetic voices of the bandits quickly disappeared. The bandits were tormented for 3 days and nights before they came to Liban City. Cal then picked 5 bandits who looked useful and brought them with him. Ironically, they were the same 5 bandits who had been heading to the stone pillar in order to turn it into a sculpture. They were now completely loyal to Becrox and Cal. The 5 bandits who became the first 5 staff members of the would now be responsible and law-abiding staff members. Cal left the work to the staff as he proceeded with his own tasks. Cal looked down from the top of a building that made it possible for him to see the entire Liban City. The Mercenaries Guild and the Merchant Guild are the 2 most influential guilds in Liban City. "That is what they say, sir," the bandit leader energetically responded back. It would suffice to say that Liban City is controlled by the Mercenaries Guild and the Merchant Guild during the day, and the underworld during the night. He was responding back with as much information as possible as he peeked around. They were on top of a tall roof. He didn't understand why they were chatting here, however. He just silently watched Cal, and the 2 cats who were eating junk food, the old man who ended up being the scariest person of the bunch, as well as the man with white gold hair who had earned Cal's respect. The bandit leader decided not to think about any of it, as he just explained everything he knew. After looking at the history of Liban City, it makes sense that the mercenaries and merchants have a lot of power in this city. "History?" "Yes, sir." The bandit leader coughed after seeing Cal's gaze that seemed to be telling him to explain, and then proceeded to speak. This place was said to be full of monsters in the past. The monsters roamed in Liban City, as well as the surrounding region, including Mount Lib. Cal's gaze headed toward Haven. Haven was already paying attention to the bandit leader. Monsters. They were the reason that the stone pillar had been placed here. That is why no kingdoms nor nobles were able to extend their reaches into this region. The mercenaries gathered here instead. The bandit leader nodded his head at Cal's comment. "Yes, sir." The merchants soon followed after noticing that the mercenaries were here. The adventurers showed up as well. Soon enough, this free city had been developed. The monsters slowly dwindled after that as well. The number of monsters went down. Yes, sir. That was why the other kingdoms tried to take control of Liban City that ended up a free city. However, the mercenaries and merchants had already gained a lot of power prior to that. Furthermore, although the number of monsters had decreased, there were still enough monsters to scare people away and keep this as a free city. The number of monsters had decreased. Cal's gaze headed toward Ron. I knew that Lian was a free city, however, I didn't know about such a history. Ron was originally from the East region. There was no need for him to know the details about a small free city in the northwest region of the eastern continent. Human. Why do you think the number of monsters went down? I'm curious. Right. Cal was curious to know how the monsters in Liban City that required the super rock to create the stone pillar to defend had disappeared. Iruhaben seemed to be having the same thought. However, Cal had another thought at the same time. What about the mayor? The mayor. There needed to be a public figure who took care of the free city. The position of mayor is passed between the Merchant Guild and the Mercenaries Guild each election. Is that so? Yes, sir. That is why people who are not part of either group have a lot of complaints. But what can they do about it? The underworld bastards are already in cahoots with the Merchant Guild and the Mercenaries Guild. There is no way that the average citizen would be able to win against them. Really? The others don't get any say. The bandit leader stopped talking. It was because he saw the smile on Cal's face. The witty bandit leader felt chills on his back and started to speak almost as a reflex. The mayor has never been someone from the regular citizens. This is because there is no shrimp that can win in a battle of whales. Well, a regular shrimp won't be able to win. The bandit leader and Cal made eye contact. But, well, there could be a shrimp that ends up winning. Right, Ron? Young Master Nim, I do not wish to be a shrimp. Beecrox is really good at cooking. Ron watched his puppy young Master Nim, who was smiling while avoiding his gaze. He was certain that Cal was hatching another plan in his mind. Everybody was slightly worried, as Cal tended to do things on a large scale whenever he did something. However, Cal did not know about this as he thought about all sorts of things before asking the bandit leader a question. Do the Mercenaries Guild and Merchants Guild have connections with the underworld? That is part of the reason that Liban City is called the City of Pleasure and Lawlessness. They work together quite frequently. Then who are the strong ones in the underworld? Two organizations are strong in Liban City. The bandit leader took a map out of his pocket and handed it to Cal. Cal immediately opened it. It was a map focused on the east side of Liban City, which was divided into pieces. One side is an organization that has been controlling Liban City ever since it was founded. It is an organization led by someone named Mostru, and they are pretty close with the Mercenaries Guild. And the other is ARM. Yes, sir, they are the other organization. They have a bad relationship with the Mercenaries Guild. And the Merchant Guild? They always remain neutral. Cal looked at the map of Liban City's underworld. Although the map was divided, there were many spots on the map that were marked with circles as well. What are these circles? The small organizations that are still around. Really? The bandit leader flinched after seeing an evil smirk on Cal's face again. That the old man that I sell my goods to run his own independent region. This map is something I received from that old man in the past. The past? Yes, sir. Approximately 6 months ago, ARM's influence is slightly stronger now. Tap, tap. Cal tapped on the map with his finger. You need a strong foundation in order to control the underworld. Isn't that right, former bandit leader? Correct. Hypothetically speaking. Cal's gaze headed toward Ron. What would happen to Liban City if ARM took control of Liban City's underworld? They would become their subordinates. So would the Merchant Guild and the Mercenaries Guild. Cal looked at the map and started to think. A few words came out of his mouth. Mayor, Mercenaries, Merchant, Mostru, the mayors of the other cities. Iruhaben shook his head after hearing Cal say mayor twice. The unlucky human was screwing up his life again. However, it sounded like this time he would not be screwing up his own life, but someone else's life. Iruhaben looked at the bandit leader's pale expression, as well as the blank expression on Ron's face. Cal started to speak at that moment. How often does the mayor change? You see, yes, the bandit leader hesitated after seeing Cal's gaze that was waiting for the answer before finally responding. Funny thing is that there are only about 3 months left. Ha 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 ha. Ho, Cal let out a gasp as his eyes started to sparkle. The bandit leader felt annoyed at his useless wit and avoided Cal's gaze. Of course, Cal was not looking at the bandit leader. He was quickly plotting things in his head. I need to shake arm at their roots in the eastern continent if I want to catch them. The starting point is important. It will not be enough to take care of them only on the western continent. That was the reason Cal had come to the eastern continent, Liban City. Cal had a lot to gain here as it was a free city. It was somewhere where a person's identity did not matter. Tap, tap. Cal's fingers that were tapping on the map started to get stronger. The bandit leader who was watching this with caution made eye contact with Cal. Go. Excuse me? Go do what you have to do. Ah, yes, sir. The bandit leader bowed in his clean outfit before heading down from the roof. His movements were quite agile for his large size. Cal started to speak once the bandit leader disappeared. Iruhaben Nim. Looks like I will need to learn more about Liban City's history. Cal looked toward Iruhaben, who knew what he had to do without Cal needing to say anything. How can you learn about its history? You will need quite ancient information if you wanted to know the history starting from the Super Rocks time. It was not easy getting old history for anywhere. This was especially true when you were not looking for written history, but the truth. Cal could see Iruhaben casually answer back. I just need to ask a dragon. Excuse me. What? A dragon in existence revealed itself in the air as Cal became shocked. Goldie, there are other dragons? Why are you asking such an obvious question? Little kid, there are 10 dragons on the eastern continent. Wow, I want to meet the other dragons? No. Iruhaben spoke sternly as he said that. That bastard is crazy. If he is crazy using dragon standards, Cal did not say this out loud. Then Goldie, how do you know him? You have a really good personality. The corners of Iruhaben's lips twitched at Rayon's question, however. The gold dragon let out a fake cough without smiling. Ahem, because I have a good personality. Iruhaben started to frown as if he was thinking about that dragon and continued to speak. I protected him when he went through his first growth phase. Protected him? Goldie, why do you need to protect them when they are growing? Iruhaben's expression turned odd at Cal and Rayon's question. Didn't I tell you that I was planning on making this kid go through his first growth phase in my lair? I think you did, Cal recalled when Iruhaben had taught Rayon many things. That was so that I could protect him. My lair is the safest place. As you all already know, dragons go through a total of 3 growth phases. The body's plate grows with the first growth phase. The physical appearance does not change as it is only creating the foundations for the dragon's future growth. The dragon then grows significantly during the second and third growth phases and becomes stronger as well. There are growing pains each time. Not all dragons are the same. There are rankings in a dragon's level of strength, and the dragons that will go on to become stronger will suffer the most. I didn't know. Cal had not known about this. All he had known was that dragons go through 3 growth phases. The novel did not discuss a dragon's growth. However, it almost seemed obvious once he thought about it. It would be weird if they didn't have any reaction to a sudden explosive growth. I assumed you knew this, but I guess you didn't. I didn't know. I am great and mighty, but I did not know this. But it is fine because I learned it now. The little kid has turned weird. Iruhaben patted the black dragon's round head as he continued to speak. That is why young dragons suffer a lot when they go through their first growth phases alone, but it looks like you won't need to suffer. Even I know that. I am not worried. Rayon's shoulders moved up and down as he stealthily peeked at the rest of the group. Of course, Iruhaben noticed this and started to smile. This little dragon had grown quite a bit, and he had grown properly. Although he was not like a dragon, he still grew up like a dragon. Iruhaben made eye contact with the black dragon. You will naturally have to be there as well, Goldie. The ancient dragon let out a laugh. He found it cute that the little kid was pretending not to know that he did not have much time left. Iruhaben patted the black dragon's head a little harder. Little kid, I am a very busy person." He expected Rayon to grumble as usual as he said that. In fact, Iruhaben was looking forward to the little kid's usual reaction. However, Rayon's expression turned odd. "Human? Why are you calling me in such an ominous way?" Cal, who had been sitting at the edge of the roof and looking at Rayon, had an odd expression on his face. His face soon started to turn into a frown as his gaze headed toward Rayon's chubby front paw. A video communication device appeared in Rayon's paw. Beep, beep. It was an emergency call. "Human, it is a call from the slightly crazy bastard." The one calling was the slightly crazy guardian knight, Clope Seca. Cal had no idea what this bastard had to say. 1. There is a Korean proverb that says that birds listen to day words and rats listen to night words. So, the English equivalent of this would be, rumors spread like wildfire. Chapter 232. Something obvious 1. Cal headed back to a corner room on the 3rd floor of the old inn. He left Ron outside the door and had Rayon immediately connect the call. "Human, are we going to fight against that slightly crazy bastard today?" "There's no need." However, contrary to what he was saying, Cal's expression did not look good. He recalled the battle in the Caro Kingdom. He had suffered significantly because he had trusted Clope's comments about how the dragon half-blood was weak. Just thinking about that made him want to forget about working with the Perun Kingdom and instead just smashing them apart. Crackle, crackle. He watched as the screen floated above the video communication device and waited for Clope. He had made up his mind to give Clope a piece of his mind. Cal Nim. However, Cal became anxious once the call connected. "First of all, don't clasp your hands like that." Clope appeared on the screen with his hands clasped as if he was praying toward Cal. "I had a feeling you would be uncomfortable with this, Cal Nim." Clope Seca lowered his hands as he sat there with a calm expression. In return, Cal's expression turned extremely odd. "He looks fine, but he's a total loony." "Cal Nim, the reason I called, hold on." Cal cut Clope off and asked, "I've been curious about this for a while, but why do you keep calling me Cal Nim? Your position is higher than mine. Just call me young master like everyone else. People will think it is weird." It was fine for Choi Han to call him Cal Nim. Since he had done so from the beginning, however, Clope Seca could not call him that, especially thinking about how they would work together in the future. Cal thought that Clope would understand the meaning behind his words. "I cannot do that. Cal Nim is not just a young master or a commander. Cal Nim is the G. Stop." Cal felt as if he should not hear what Clope would say next. He didn't want to hear that word that started with a G. Cal held back his sigh and continued to speak. "Why have you been quiet all this time and just now giving me a call?" Clope could see that Cal was looking at him with a cold gaze even though his voice was calm. It had been much longer than 1 week since Cal had the Whale tribe strike the Perun Kingdom's northern patrol stations. Cal had given them 1 week, however. The Perun Kingdom had not contacted him until now. Why did it take them so long to respond? Clope smiled after seeing that Cal was still calm without any signs of anger nor uneasiness. "I could not come empty-handed." Cal started to smile. "I knew this guy's head worked well. Yes, you can't come empty-handed to make a deal." The Caro Kingdom's battle. The Perun Kingdom had realized that they needed a new source for survival other than the Indomitable Alliance after seeing the results. They also knew that the Roan Kingdom was the one who would give them an alternative path for survival. Screech. Cal leaned back onto the old chair and motioned toward Clope with his chin. He was telling Clope to show him what the Perun Kingdom had brought after such a long time. "I will decide after I see what you brought." Cal and the Roan Kingdom had the upper hand and could make up their mind afterward. Clope had to stop the corners of his lips from going up. "I knew I was right. The path to a legend." Clope had felt chills throughout his body after hearing about the Caro Kingdom's battle. Hearing about the appearance of the Dark Elves and how Cal's shield had defended against the light arrow was electrifying. He knew that Cal would have underestimated Arms Mage after his unintentional misinformation. Even then, Cal managed to defeat a formidable foe who suddenly appeared. That was what a hero, no, what a legend should be able to do. The White Snake could see a path to survival in Cal. That was why he had done everything he could in order to prepare this for him. The Indomitable Alliance is currently barely managing to hold on. It was obvious. They had been destroyed in both of the major battles, but they cannot retreat just like this. Arm, which has somehow become the central figure of the Alliance, is pushing for a final stand. Arm's final stand. Cal could easily imagine where the location of this battle would be. He thought about two different people. Rosalind, who had thrown away her position as a princess in order to focus on being a mage, and Locke, who would end up walking the path of the Wolf King. He was thinking about the Breck Kingdom where the two of them currently were, as well as the Gorge of Death within the Breck Kingdom. The final battle will be at the Gorge of Death. Clope could no longer stop himself from smiling. It was because Cal's expression was one of someone who already knew about it. As expected, Cal Nim's foresight is amazing. It is fitting for someone who will become a legend. Clope. Cal quickly cut off the crazy bastard's nonsense. He then observed the white-haired guardian knight, Clope Seca, who was looking at him. Currently, only the Roan Kingdom and a few of the Perun Kingdom's people knew about Clope's whereabouts. The rest believed that he was currently missing or that he had been killed in the Henatus territory. That was why there were many uses for him. Cal slowly started to speak. If it was you, with the weakened Indomitable Alliance, no, let me put it differently. Cal's side will naturally be the ones to win the battle at the Gorge of Death. The winning side can enjoy their victory. But what about the losers? The strength of the three kingdoms in the north will be dismal after they lose at the Gorge of Death. The Perun Kingdom, Askasan, and Norland will all be weak after the battle. Wouldn't the weakened north be easy prey for someone? Was there anything easier than swallowing up a weakened enemy? Cal might be wrong, however. Why would Arm spend so much resources in order to have the Indomitable Alliance prepare for a final battle? Maybe Arm realized that they would not be able to take any of the southern lands through the Indomitable Alliance, and were instead thinking about taking the northern lands instead. The Lion Tribe, Bear Tribe, and the Flame Dwarf Tribe probably all want their own territories. In that case, would they want the difficult-to-acquire southern lands or the easy-to-take northern lands? The answer was obvious. Clope Seca, the enemy is within your ranks. Cal was giving Clope and the Perun Kingdom a warning. It was at that moment. Heh. Cal could see Clope Seca suddenly starting to laugh like a maniac. Heh, Cal Nim, you really are heh. What is wrong with him? Cal's pupils started to shake. It seemed as if Clope was getting crazier even though all he said was to be wary of Arm. Cal slowly tried to move away from the screen. Human, this guy is not just slightly crazy. Cal and the 6-year-old dragon had the same thought. Clope started to speak at that moment. Cal Nim, we are prepared. Prepared. The person who had been laughing like a maniac had returned back to normal. Cal's expression was still iffy, but his expression changed after hearing what Clope had to say. We have prepared a route to invade all the way to Askasan and Norland's palaces. What? Cal flinched. He then observed Clope. Clope still had a calm expression in his face, however. His eyes were glowing. We have prepared the shortest route from the Perun Kingdom in order to take down both Askasan and Norland. We have also installed a large-scale teleportation magic circle in the Perun Kingdom's Knights training ground. That is the reason we were a bit late. There was something that Cal had missed until now. Clope Seca was the crazy person who had waged war against the continent in order to make himself into a legend. He had already been crazy. He was someone who would do anything and figure out everything necessary in order to achieve his goals. I plan to offer that route to the Roan Kingdom. No, I offer that route to you, Cal Nim. Clope slowly started to smile. You mentioned that Arm may aim for the northern kingdoms, right? Clope Seca. He knew very well that the true symbol of his household was a white snake. It was because that was his personality as well. However, he had strong feelings about being a person from the Perun Kingdom. Why? The Perun Kingdom's royal family and leaders were the ones who had turned this white snake household into the Guardian Knight household. They too had felt strongly about being citizens from the Perun Kingdom for similar reasons. A bright smile settled on Clope's face. Cal Nim, that action that arm may or may not take. That is our Perun Kingdom's specialty. He was talking about being the hidden enemy within the alliance. The Perun Kingdom was confident that they could do it as well. We just have to do it before Arm makes their move. No, Kalnim, you, and the Roan Kingdom can do it first. The Perun Kingdom had found a route for survival and was offering this as part of the deal. Cal honestly responded back to Clope, who was on the other side of the screen. You crazy bastard. Ha ha ha, don't I need to move quickly in order to keep up with a legend? Cal sternly responded to Clope, who was now laughing. Put your dad on the line. He felt as if he needed to talk to someone sane right now. Cal chose to chat with Duke Rockseca instead of Clope. The call soon ended. Cal brushed his face with both hands. Weak human. Will the Roan Kingdom control the entire north? Do you think that is possible? Cal scoffed at Rayon's comment, however. He felt chills at the back of his neck as well. But according to that white-haired father-son duo, although we may not be able to take their hand, wouldn't the Roan Kingdom be able to threaten the three northern kingdoms? Cal could not respond to Rayon's question this time. In the end, he opened the room door with an ominous feeling. Click. The door opened, and he could see Ron, who was standing guard. He then sternly spoke to Ron, who was looking at him. I will be heading back to the western continent for a bit. I will be back in a month, so you know what to do, right? Ron understood exactly what Cal was getting at and responded back. I will prepare a plan to eat up the Liban city's underworld. 1 month should be the perfect amount of time to plan for the opening of the inn as well. Ron truly was reliable. Cal looked toward the dragon standing next to Ron. The ancient dragon casually responded back. I will look for another dragon while you are not here. I'm sure that you need to learn about the history of Liban City. Thank you very much. The ancient dragon stepped up in order to figure out the secrets behind the history of the city. Cal gave a short thank you before using the teleportation magic circle to return to the western continent's Super Rock Villa, with the children averaging 9 years old. Cal finished his preparations at Super Rock Villa before moving elsewhere. He was wearing a clean black uniform. The teleportation soon completed and Cal's sight returned. Your Highness, Crown Prince Alberu Crossman. He could see him in the distance. This was a secret teleportation magic circle inside the palace. Cal had used this to stealthily enter the palace. Cal started to speak in reflex as soon as he saw the Crown Prince's face. You are as fancy and passionate as the rising sun as usual. Cal stopped talking. He quickly returned to his usual voice as he continued to speak. Your Highness, I know this is going to sound terrible, but what's wrong with your face? Did something happen? Alberu Crossman. His face was a total mess. He seemed tired from being stuck in the middle of a bunch of annoying things. The way he was standing as he greeted Cal seemed a bit desperate as well. Is there something for me to do again? Cal started to get a bad feeling again. Cal Henatus. Alberu was not using the title of commander, and instead was using his name for the first time in a long time. However, there was no energy in his voice. Cal started to consider teleporting right back. It was at that moment. Alberu started to speak in the most serious voice he had ever used. You only seem to have people that cause headaches around you. Excuse me, people that cause headaches? Ah, Cal quickly understood what he meant. Alberu was talking about the people who had been staying in the capital while Cal was in the eastern continent. Choi Han, Mary, and Hilsman. Cal nodded his head. Yes, I'm sure His Highness found the terrible actor Choi Han and the innocent Mary to be hard to handle. For someone like Alberu, who found it difficult to handle even the Caro Kingdom's crown prince, Valentino, Choi Han and Mary must have been extremely difficult. Cal had a good understanding of it. I guess Choi Han and Mary are really difficult to handle. One was too stiff and terrible at acting while the other was too innocent and nice. Cal could see Crown Prince Alberu scoffing at his response. Your meaning of difficult is quite surprising. Excuse me? Never mind, it's nothing. Alberu shook his head. He then turned around and started to walk, making Cal follow behind him with a confused expression. He heard Rayon's voice in his head as he walked. I knew Choi Han's smile was weird. What is he talking about? Cal looked at Alberu's back as they headed out of the secret underground room. He heard Alberu's voice at that moment. You seem to be someone who is quite loved. Are you really sick, Your Highness? You have suffered quite a bit. Just what was going on? Cal did not understand Alberu's words as he continued to follow behind him. Click. Alberu opened the door, heading back to surface, and they appeared in a room. It was Alberu Crossman's new office. It was the same one he would use once he became king. The office was full of papers. Cal heard someone's voice as he took a step back in disgust. Young Master Cal. Cal looked toward one of the walls. A screen from a video communication device was taking up an entire wall. Long time no see, young Master Cal. He could see a face through the video communication device. It was someone whose beautiful red hair was different than Cal's in that it resembled the sun in the middle of the day. Rosalind. She greeted Cal with a smile. Cal smiled back and greeted her as well. Long time no see, Miss Rosalind. She smiled again and asked a question. The Indomitable Alliance is heading down in 2 days. Yes. Rosalind's smile became even wider after hearing Cal's short response. We will get to see all of them, the Bear Tribe, the Lion Tribe, and the Dwarves, of course. The Flame Dwarf Tribe made devices for them to cross the Gorge of Death. Correct. Rosalind, who was wearing a robe over her leather armor, pushed the corners of her lips back down with her fingers. A battle against the Indomitable Alliance. Although she did not wish for it to happen, a part of her had been longing for this moment. She had stayed at the Breck Kingdom even when her friends were fighting in the Roan Kingdom and the Caro Kingdom. She did not contact them via video communication device either. It was partially because she believed they would win, however. There was one main reason. Rosalind. She knew that there was royal blood flowing in her body. The blood of a king. Although she had thrown away her position as a princess, the blood still flowed through her. That blood was making her angry right now. The blood of a king could not forgive those who aimed for their territory. It was for the Breck Kingdom and her family, as well as for the people who were precious to her that were coming to help the Breck Kingdom out. It was so that she could protect all of them with her own hands. It was also so that she could relieve her anger against those who were aiming for her land. Rosalind had been training to become stronger with Cal's help. She was happy knowing that the time that she had been waiting for was near as she asked Cal a question. Will the enemy be able to get past the Gorge of Death? Rosalind could see Cal starting to smile. What an impossible imagination. He was saying that the enemies getting past the Gorge of Death would never happen. I will see you soon. Rosalind said a short farewell before ending the call. Cal turned around and looked back at Crown Prince Alberu. Alberu motioned for Cal to speak. Your Highness, it looks like we will need to gather people together one more time. It was now the end of winter. They needed to do it one more time before spring arrived. Cal started to prepare for the final battle against the Indomitable Alliance. Chapter 233. Something obvious, too. The battle at the Gorge of Death would take place in 2 days. Cal had to busy himself in the remaining time. Well, at least he was supposed to. Cal brushed his face with both of his hands. Choi Han, what is this estimate sheet for? Cal was waving a piece of paper in his hand. Flap, flap. The paper that was fluttering in Cal's hand had a lot of numbers written on it. A piece of the palace had been broken, and this was the breakdown of the costs of the repair. Choi Han silently lowered his head. Cal sighed and picked up another piece of paper. That paper fluttered in the air as well. He was looking at Mary this time. Why did 3 nobles suddenly fall ill? An innocent and mechanical voice responded back. I am not sure. They were curious about my powers, so I showed them a bit of it. Mary recalled the small gathering that had happened after the parade. It was only a small celebration as the war was not over yet. However, it looked as if the world was sparkling in Mary's eyes. It was an extremely shocking experience for Mary. So Tasha had helped the overwhelmed Mary head out to the terrace to rest. 3 nobles had appeared at the terrace at that time and spoken to her in a friendly way, asking about her powers. She thought that they were trying to get close to her and showed them a bit of her power. But they suddenly said that I should throw young Master Calnim away and join up with them. They said that we could then take you down and take power for ourselves. Heh. Cal turned his head after hearing suppressed laughter coming from behind him. Crown Prince Alberu had his head down on his desk with his shoulders moving up and down. It was obvious that he was struggling to keep himself from laughing. Cal's lips started to twist. And the black robe started to speak in a serious manner. She had become wary of the three nobles at that moment. "So then, am I the enemy?" That was what I asked them. They responded back with, "You can be the enemy, or you can come and join us from here on." The three nobles were people from the central faction. They were trying to pull Mary toward their faction, however. Mary heard the nobles' conversation about power differently. "I wondered if they were from Arm, as they were talking about taking you down, young Master Nim. I thought they were either from Arm or the Indomitable Alliance. However, I just remained quiet as you told me not to fight, but then they just suddenly fainted." Mary recalled how the three people had suddenly started to faint. They were weird people. Mary could not understand the courage that those weak people had to say that she could be their enemy. "Ha!" Cal let out a deep sigh. He could still hear Albaru's snickering, but he ignored it as he looked toward Choi Han. Choi Han's situation was a typical cliché. "One of the noble's sons threw a glove at you." Choi Han lowered his head once more. Someone else responded in his stead. "Yes, sir. Young Master Nim, it was Vice Captain Hilsman." During the celebration, Marquis Alan's successor suddenly questioned whether Choi Han was really a sword master and threw a glove at him in order to issue a challenge. Cal had a blank expression on his face. Fantasy worlds always had the spoiled young masters who challenged the main character or other strong characters. Marquis Alan. The Alan household was known as the strongest martial artist household in the southeast region and the entire Roan kingdom. And I'm sure Choi Han would normally have ignored such a thing. "Of course, we remembered your orders and ignored him. However, that noble's son then started to talk crap about the Hennetus household." "What did he say?" "He said that, for being a martial arts household, the Hennetus household is extremely weak. All they do is use money in order to have strong subordinates to protect them." Well, they're not wrong. Cal didn't really take it as talking crap. Although the members of the Hennetus household knew how to handle the sword, there were no extremely strong individuals. Lily does show great potential, however. It was still only potential for now. Furthermore, the person had said that they were rich and had strong subordinates. Isn't that even better? It didn't annoy him at all. However, contrary to his expectations, Hilsman still seemed to be angry as he was huffing and puffing. That was why Choi Han accepted the challenge. He ended up destroying the palace's training ground in the process. But it is not his fault that that young master was so weak. Piwahaha. Albaru's laughter hit Cal's ears like background music. Hilsman continued to speak. Of course, Marquis Alan appeared and took that young master with him. He then apologized to Choi Han and said that he would apologize to the Hennetus household as well. "A message will be sent to Count Hennetus soon." My poor life. Albaru's laughter became even louder. "Human, I truly am the best," Rayon's voice echoed like background music in Cal's mind. He then jumped up from his seat. Choi Han and Mary tilted their heads in confusion as they looked toward Cal. Even the Crown Prince held back his laughter as he looked at Cal. "Where are you going?" the Crown Prince asked with a serious expression. "I'm going to go get some air, Your Highness." "Oh, should I go for a walk as well?" Albaru could see a blank expression on Cal's face. "But I am going to the north." "What?" Cal's walk was to quite the distance away. "I will be back in half a day." Cal needed to go north before going to the Breck Kingdom. It was because of the ancient dragon, Iruhaben's request. Iruhaben was still in the eastern continent looking into the Stone Pillar and the Liban City region on Cal's behalf. He had something to do on the western continent, and Cal agreed to do so in his place. "I need to go see the elves." The north. That lake was probably still surrounded by snow. He needed to go see the elves and the world tree. "You'll be back in half a day." "Yes, Your Highness." It was fine as long as Rayon was with him. "Then we just need to finish the preparations while you are away." Mary, Choi Han, and Hilsman's expressions changed after hearing Albaru's comment. Cal looked around at them and nodded his head. "That sounds great." Cal went for his walk with a light heart, the elf village underneath the lake with the world tree. Here, we gathered some more. The young elf priestess took a pouch out of her loose sleeves and handed it to Cal. Clang. Clang. The refreshing sound of coins hitting each other reached Cal's ears. The World Tree has not said anything, but I thought that we would need another bag of money. I gathered it on my own accord. We cannot have a sea of fire. The young priestess made it sound like she was close to Cal as she welcomed him with a bright smile. Thanks. Cal debated it for a moment before taking the bag of money. It should be fine to take it because elves are not materialistic. Cal was not the type to reject when someone gave him free money. Instead, he took a small jewel out of his pocket and started to speak. Lead the way. I understand. The World Tree has been waiting for you. The young priestess energetically started to walk. Cal slowly followed behind the young elf. Oh, Rayon Nim, your cuteness is just as explosive as ever. I get to meet Rayon Nim like this again. I can die happily now. The great and mighty Rayon Nim. He could hear the voices of other elves coming from behind him. Rayon, who puffed up his chest and was flapping his wings, pointed his front paw toward them. I am busy right now. You can admire me a bit later. He then chased behind Cal. Cal peeked toward Rayon and then patted him on the head as he continued to walk toward the World Tree. In addition to Eruhaben's request, he had something to ask the World Tree. He headed for the spot where the leaves of the large trees rustled in the wind. It was the average-looking tree at the center of that bunch. Cal could see that the World Tree looked even more average than last time. Hey, World Tree, have you been well? One of the World Tree's branches slightly trembled as if responding to Rayon. The World Tree had lost 3 branches while telling Cal 3 things last time. Find Rayon's parents. There is an existence that has gathered 3 ancient powers. Find the water of judgment. Cal remembered what the World Tree had told him. Cal Nim, you can speak to the World Tree like last time. I guess it is possible to chat now. The World Tree had fallen into a slight slumber after telling Cal those 3 facts. The young elf put on an odd smile and nodded her head. Yes, short conversations are possible. Cal slowly headed toward the World Tree. He then put his hand on the trunk and closed his eyes. Cal, it's been a while. The World Tree sounded weak. Cal held the small jewel with his other hand. This is the item that Eruhaben Nim made. There is a defensive magic in order to protect the elf village and World Tree Nim within it. Eruhaben had decided to strengthen the defensive magic around the World Tree after one of the branches was stolen and had asked Cal to take care of it. Rayon will install it. It will not take long. Is that so? Thank you. Tell Eruhaben thanks as well. The World Tree's voice was slightly shaking even though they were just having a short conversation. Cal's expression turned into a frown. The World Tree must have realized this as it started to explain. I am still in recovery. I've already recovered a good amount. I should return to full strength within the year. Cal was glad to hear this. If the World Tree was at full strength, there would be no reason to strengthen the defense. However, Eruhaben chose to strengthen the World Tree with defensive magic because it was hurt. You look like you have some questions. Is there something you wish to say? Cal's shoulders flinched. He debated it for a moment before starting to speak. You don't need to respond if something similar to last time will happen. The young priestess, who can only hear Cal's voice, flinched after hearing, like last time. She recalled how the branches had fallen down. Her heart was beating so fast just thinking about it. Rayon recalled that as well and started to frown. Sure. Cal started to speak after hearing the World Tree's response. He made it a little vague, knowing that Rayon was by his side. He knew that the World Tree would still understand. Where do I need to go to find it? Not the water of judgment. The others that he had to find. He was talking about Rayon's parents. Cal bit down on his lips. He didn't want to ask if he didn't need to do so, however, it was difficult to find any clues. This was especially because they were currently in the middle of a war. I guess I can answer this one. Cal subconsciously let out a sigh of relief. The weak but slightly strengthened voice entered his head. I'm sure it is not the answer you want to hear, however, this is my current limit, not the answer I want to hear. A king is someone who is accepted by nature. Why is the World Tree suddenly talking about a king? Cal started to frown. However, he had no choice but to pay attention to the World Tree's words, An existence that should have died is alive. The hand touching the tree flinched. Cal had asked about Rayon's parents. However, he had heard a different response. The existence that should have died in Volume 1 of The Birth of a Hero. Rayon Meru. Nature has accepted that existence. Nature had accepted the existence that should have died, the one that has a twisted fate. That alone was enough to receive the qualifications to survive. Changes, the forbidden and the unbelievable, plop. Cal felt something pat him. He then calmed himself back down. He could see Rayon's round head when he looked down. Human, is everything okay? Cal heard the faint voice of the world tree at that moment. That is what nature truly is. A continuation of the mysterious and the ever-changing. That was the way nature worked. Is it possible? Cal was thinking about the king that nature would approve. The chubby dragon that was slightly more than 1 meter and 20 centimeters slowly started to frown. Human, why are you looking at me like that? The young priestess approached them and started to speak as Cal could not respond back. The world tree nymph has fallen asleep again. I know. I'll come visit again next time. Rayon had a disappointed expression as he kicked the sand on the ground with his feet. How disappointing. I wish to speak to the world tree as well. There's no way, right? Cal shook his head to get rid of such thoughts. There was no way that was possible. If what he was thinking about was correct, he had started off by causing an extremely serious issue. There's no way saving a single dragon would cause that big of an issue. Dragon Lord. Cal could not say that word out loud as he started to speak to Rayon. Let's hurry back. All right. I will hurry so we can go see Locke. Cal watched as the 6-year-old dragon took the jewel he had received from Eruhaben and flew off toward the defensive barrier, before pushing everything off in his mind. A half-day later, with only 1 day left before the battle with the Indomitable Alliance. Cal was standing on top of a teleportation magic circle with Rayon. He was headed somewhere other than the Roan Kingdom right now. Pat. Cal opened his closed eyes. He could hear the invisible Rayon's voice. It's been a while since we've seen everyone. Cal started to smile. They were inside a small tent. A teleportation magic circle was drawn within this tent. There were 2 people greeting him as he stepped out of it. Long time no see. Rosalind and Locke. The 2 of them welcomed Cal over. Choi Han, Hilsman, and Mary had not come over yet. Cal had come here stealthily without anybody else knowing about it. Cal was smiling brightly as it had been a while since he had last seen the 2 of them. However, that smile quickly disappeared. Long time no see, young Master Cal. Rosalind was smiling, but there was something slightly odd about it. Next to her was Locke, who had his head down and could not look at Cal in the eyes. The wolf boy Locke. He could not dare to look Cal in the eyes. Cal flinched after seeing Locke act this way. Is he upset because I left him here alone for a long time? It was the moment Cal had that thought. Young Master Nim. Yes, Locke, long time no see. Cal put a hand on Locke's curled-up shoulder after hearing his upset voice. Pat, pat, his hand patted Locke's shoulder. You suffered quite a bit on your own here. It was the moment he said that. I'm sorry. Cal could see the now slightly taller Locke's face. Although his head was down, Locke's eyes were looking at Cal. Locke hesitated for a moment before starting to speak with shaking lips. I can't go berserk anymore. What? What is he talking about? Berserk transformation. It was when beast people were at their strongest. It was the moment that their animal features and their human features became much stronger. But that wasn't possible anymore. He can't do it even though his first berserk transformation already happened. Locke continued to speak despite his shaking hands as Cal thought about this issue. However, Locke's voice was extremely shaky. I need to hurry up and become the Wolf King's successor. I really need to do that. Originally, Locke would have grown after the despair caused by losing Pendrick. It looks like I cannot get stronger. But this Locke was different than the one from the novel. He wanted to be stronger but could not go berserk. Cal looked back at the tall young boy who could not look him in the eyes. Chapter 234. Something Obvious 3. The young boy with his head down. Cal could also see Rosalind, who was looking at Locke with a concerned expression. He was a beast person who could not go berserk even after his first berserk transformation had already passed. Rosalind did not know what to say, as this was the first time she had heard about such a situation. It made it even more difficult for her to say anything to the weakened Locke, as she herself had gotten much stronger in the past few months. That was why her expression did not look good as she gazed toward Locke and Cal. It was at that moment Rosalind's body flinched. Plop. The tent's entrance was lifted up and someone shouted inside. "Commander Nim, the Roan Kingdom's forces have arrived." They were calling for Rosalind. She was the commander for all magic in the Breck Kingdom. She had come back to her senses thanks to the person outside. The Roan Kingdom's forces. Although they were not large in number, friends that she could trust to cover her back were coming. It was a happy and welcomed arrival. At the same time, she recalled the upcoming battle and knew that she needed to hurry. However, Locke's current situation made her hesitate. She heard a quiet voice at that moment. "Pat, why is a young boy like you so skinny?" Rosalind could see Cal pat Locke on the back before heading toward the tent entrance. Cal opened up the flap in order to exit as he looked toward Locke. "Let's go." Locke fidgeted and could not move. "Rayon, push him." Those words made Locke flinch. He could then feel a small paw gently pushing his back. "Everybody wants to see you. Let's go, Locke." Although he was invisible, Locke could feel Rayon's existence based on his paw and his voice. Locke thought about the people waiting for him, as well as the dragon pushing him as he bit down on his lips and slowly started to walk. He was extremely weak if he could not enter his berserk state. He was still stronger than the normal person, but compared to the others, compared to his family, he was so weak that he was likely to be a burden. That was why he was not confident enough to greet them. Cal started to speak as soon as the young boy stopped right in front of him. "Focus on my back. Follow behind me and don't think about anything else." Locke's head slowly raised up. Pat, pat. He could feel the small paw patting him on the back as well. The flap covering the tent entrance was completely lifted. Locke could see the Breck Kingdom's people standing in formation outside the tent. The Gorge of Death. Many people had been stationed at different spots on the long and dangerous gorge ever since a few days ago. They were using magic in order to stealthily hide their movements. This was the spot where the largest number of people were gathered. Rosalind and the leaders of the Breck Kingdom were all here. Locke could see the leaders and their forces standing outside. They had all gathered here in order to see a single person. The Roan Kingdom's northeast region's commander. They were all waiting for him. Locke could see Cal heading out of the tent. He had heard a lot about the war while spending time with some of the Breck Kingdom's mages at the Gorge of Death. Locke naturally had heard about how much work Cal and the others had put in. That was why Cal's back seemed extremely large to him. Cal seemed to be someone who was worlds apart from someone like him. However, Locke then heard Cal's voice. "Are you not coming?" Cal still had his back toward Locke, but he was standing there without moving. Locke then felt two gentle pushes on his back. One was Rosalind, while the other was the invisible dragon. Locke slowly started to walk. He no longer paid any attention to the Breck Kingdom's leaders outside the tent. He walked while only looking at Cal's back. That was why he seemed curled up as he looked down at the shorter Cal. However, nothing was preventing him from walking forward anymore. Cal started to walk as he looked around. There was a large number of people gathered here. However, the majority of the Breck Kingdom's forces were stationed at the closest city next to the Gorge of Death, ready to move at any moment. Cal looked toward Rosalind, who walked up to him and started to speak. "Are all the troops moved?" "Yes, young Master Cal. We installed teleportation magic circles at multiple points around the gorge, while the knights and soldiers will all gather early tomorrow morning." The information about the Indomitable Alliance was currently being sent through Clope Seca. The Roan Kingdom had decided that it was better for the Indomitable Alliance to not know about Clope and the Perun Kingdom's betrayal until later. That was why the Breck Kingdom's preparations for the Indomitable Alliance were done as secretly as possible, early the next morning. That was the time Clope had said the Indomitable Alliance would make their move. "Young Master Cal, the number of forces we are currently moving should not seem odd, even if the Indomitable Alliance manages to notice it." Of course. As Rosalind mentioned, the number of people that were already at each spot seemed normal and not as if they were preparing for battle. The indomitable alliance had not given up yet. In that case, where else could they strike? Anybody would be able to tell that it would be the Breck Kingdom. People could not easily believe it because of the Gorge of Death, however. It would seem normal that the Breck Kingdom would send approximately 100 soldiers to places around the Gorge of Death, just in case. Rosalind started to speak. The Roan Kingdom and Breck Kingdom's mage brigades will be able to properly show themselves this time. Cal looked at Rosalind's confident smile and chuckled. This was the mage brigade's true leader. Rosalind had not shown herself until now. She was a highest-grade mage with the qualifications to be a future magic tower master. She had spent the last few months strengthening herself and her magic abilities. The thought of using that power for the first time was making her mind run wild right now. I'm curious about this method that the dwarves figured out in order to cross the Gorge of Death. Cal recalled one piece of information Clope had provided after hearing Rosalind's thought. The Flame Dwarf tribe will supposedly play a big role in the upcoming attack. They said that they found a way to freely move across the Gorge of Death. However, they will not reveal the method until right before the attack. It looks like they are seeking redemption for the ships at the Caro Kingdom. I think they are trying to exaggerate their abilities by revealing it at the last possible moment. Anyway, I will let our Roan Kingdom know as soon as I find out, so it shouldn't matter, right? Ha 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 ha. Cal started to frown after recalling Clope's crazy laugh as well. He would only trust half of what that crazy bastard said from now on. Rosalind did not see Cal's expression as she pointed to a side. Ah, young Master Cal, you know Count Ekros, right? Cal's gaze headed toward where Rosalind was pointing, Count Ekros. He was the #1 disciple of the top mage in the Breck Kingdom, making him the second-ranked mage in the entire Breck Kingdom. Of course, Rosalind was not a part of that ranking. Cal clearly remembered how Ekros had ignored and looked down on him when he visited the Gorge of Death last time. Count Ekros flinched as soon as they made eye contact. He subconsciously gulped, Cal Henitus. Ekros clearly remembered how Cal had come with the Tiger tribe earlier in the year. The Cal from back then and Commander Cal in uniform today felt extremely different. It could not be helped as Ekros had heard about everything Cal had done. The battle at the Henitus territory, the battle at the Roan Kingdom's northeast region's shores, and finally, the battle in the Caro Kingdom. All of those deeds had made Count Ekros embarrassed about his past actions, however. He felt relief knowing that the Cal who came to assist the Breck Kingdom was reliable. Long time no see, Count Ekros. Yes, Commander Calnim, it has been a while. Count Ekros subconsciously used respectful language toward Cal, however, neither of them realized the change. I knew he would be like this. Rayon had realized it, but Cal did not have time to pay attention to him. Commander Nim? Cal Nim. Cal could see a group of people walking toward him from the other side. They were the Roan Kingdom's 1st Knights Brigade and the Mage Brigade. Finally, there was Choi Han, Mary, and the rest of his group. Count Ekros looked toward the main characters responsible for the Roan Kingdom's victory and took a small step back. They had already won 2 battles. The aura around them was completely different than his own. Cal looked at the people around him and started to speak. Let us start our meeting. The dwarves' method of crossing the gorge, the Lion tribe and Bear tribe, and even the enemy soldiers that will come with them. They needed a good plan that would make all of them walk on top of their palms. Cal headed back to the tent with Rosalind and the other leaders and passed by Locke, who was standing behind him. He walked by and said something to Locke. Let's eat dinner together tonight. Cal saw that Choi Han, Mary, and the others who were not a part of the meeting surround Locke and continued to walk without any second thoughts. What are you doing? Are you not going to eat? This tent had been created for Cal. A decent dinner table was set up in this quite large tent that was imbued with soundproof magic. Cal continued to eat the food in front of him and peeked toward the other side. Did the Breck Kingdom not feed you? And no, they did. Locke flailed his arms in shock. However, Cal's expression did not look good. Kim Rock-Soo had once had to starve in the past. He did not enjoy seeing children looking so skinny. Although Locke had always looked feeble and his tall height made him skinny from the start, he seemed even thinner now. Cal looked at Locke, who was holding a fork but unable to eat anything, before turning his gaze back to his plate. "If you have something to say, hurry up and say it so that you can eat some food." Locke flinched and looked at Cal. Only Ron, Cal, and Locke were at the table. The others were eating dinner together elsewhere. Locke knew the reason Cal had prepared this meal for just the three of them. He slowly started to speak. "Really, I really trained very hard. I wanted to show you that you were right to trust me, and so I trained as hard as I could. I trust you." Locke had trained endlessly at the Gorge of Death in order to thank Cal for trusting him. He had worked so hard, such that he had almost passed out numerous times. Every day felt so long at the Gorge of Death if he did not do that. But most importantly, he didn't want to be left behind as his friends got stronger. "I pushed myself harder and harder after hearing about how Choi Han Hyung and the others performed during the battles. The story of how they had protected the Hennetus territory. The story about the battle at the Rhone Kingdom's shores. Hearing those stories had made his heart beat wildly. My family did these things. He was so proud that he wanted to share it with everybody while being thankful that they were okay. He then used it in order to motivate himself as he was left alone at the gorge. I read through the Wolf King's diary that you gave me, young Master Nim. He had a wonderful tool to assist him, the diary that Cal had given him. That diary had been written in someone's blood. Cal had read that diary as well. He looked toward Locke. This was written inside the diary. The reason Cal had left Locke here alone had to do with the diary as well. The young boy started to recite what he had read in the diary. Wolves need to know about loss and loneliness. Only when they are alone can they realize the importance of those that are precious to them and become stronger. Locke did not disagree with the statement. He agreed with the old diary. The words written in dry blood were correct. He too had gone through his first berserk transformation when he had lost the Blue Wolf tribe and his family. That was when he had first found a way to get stronger. What the Wolf King was saying was true. Although a wolf may shed its own blood, it will not allow those precious to it to bleed. Locke had agreed with the Wolf King here as well. It was better for him to bleed than for those precious to him to bleed. He really believed this to be the case. I read that over and over and trained really hard. But Locke saw that the hand holding his fork was shaking, and so he clasped his two hands together. Chapter 235. Something obvious for, it really had been all of a sudden. I suddenly couldn't go berserk. I can't remember how I did it. I need to quickly overcome it and take care of the issue, but I don't remember the method. It really was all of a sudden. I don't know why, Locke, since when did it not work? Pat, pat. Locke stopped talking as Rayon patted him on the shoulder. However, his eyes were still showing signs of uncertainty. Cannot enter his berserk transformation, this sudden regression of strength. Locke knew when it had started. That was why he could not say it. It would make him seem too stupid and useless. That, you see, the moment it started was... The tips of Locke's lips started to turn blue. Cal started to speak at that moment. No need. Locke flinched and looked to the other side. I'm sure it'll return someday. Excuse me. Locke could see that Cal was speaking with a calm expression on his face. Locke could feel the emotion coming from Cal through his expression and his voice. First, we need to fatten you up, relax and roll around doing nothing. He's right. Locke, you are too skinny. They were extremely calm, as if they had come here to vacation. That made Locke open and close his mouth a few times before finally managing to get a word out. But the battle is coming up. Battle, it was such a scary and fearful word. However, the response he got back was extremely calm. Locke suddenly felt upset. He started to speak. I couldn't go berserk since I heard about the war. Oops. Locke's expression crumbled after revealing that fact. He lowered his head and buried his face in his hands. He recalled the moment he realized he could not go berserk. It was when Rosalind told him about the upcoming battle. It was when she had told him that the Indomitable Alliance was headed to the Breck Kingdom for a final battle. His heart had started to beat wildly at that moment. It was then that he realized he could not go berserk anymore. Since that moment, since I learned that we are going to fight, I can't go berserk anymore. I should be fighting alongside everyone else. But why is it that I cannot go berserk right before the battle? Locke was full of despair at that fact. In fact, he was despising himself. Anybody could see why he would be like this with this timing. It's like I'm trying to avoid the battle. It's as if I am afraid. I need to grow quickly to help. Locke recalled Rosalind's look of confusion about how to console him, as well as the shocked expressions on the faces of the others whom he had not seen for a while. Their concerns for him made him hate himself even more. Choi Han Hyung and Rosalind Nuna saved my siblings and I. Locke did not think he came all this way on his own. There were too many people who helped guide his cowardly and timid self. Young Master Nim also saved us and gave us a home. I need to pay you back for that. But why am I like this? That was why Locke hated himself right now. He was embarrassed. Forget the Wolf King, he was just a weakling. Locke sighed after seeing that his two hands were still shaking. He heard Cal's voice again at that moment. It's okay. Cal put down his fork and looked toward Locke. Locke. It sounded as if Cal was telling Locke to look at him. The young boy slowly raised his head. Cal admitted his mistake and started to speak. There are people around you. Locke had never seen such an expression on Cal's face before. I left you here alone, hoping that you could learn about a wolf's loneliness. However, I did not want it to be painful. I also did not want you to be scared. Cal was not such a terrible person to want something like that for a child. He thought Locke would not feel too lonely as he knew that he had a family. However, this timid child seemed to have felt pressure and burden rather than loneliness. Loss. Originally in the novel, Healer Pendrick's death leads to Locke's first berserk transformation and helps him grow. However, Cal had no plans on doing something crazy like that. Locke was only 15 years old. You had to be a lunatic to do something like that to a child. There is no reason for you to hurry. You saved me, and you trusted me. Locke's mumblings stopped as soon as Cal asked a question. Would you throw me away if I was weak? What, something like that was unbelievable. Locke throw Cal away. Locke's eyes opened wide in shock as Cal smiled back at him. Locke, you wouldn't, right? Cal picked his fork back up. So don't ask something obvious, just eat. Something obvious. Locke was suddenly at a loss for words again. If you want to repay me for my trust, show me that you are healthy first, and just watch. You friends, your family, are stronger than you think. Clang. Locke could see Rayon pushing a fork toward him. Cal continued to speak. Even I am strong enough to protect you during a battle. Cal was speaking in a joking tone. Locke had seen many new expressions on Cal's face today. Locke slowly picked his fork back up and started to eat. Food tasted good for the first time in a long time. He had not enjoyed even the most luxurious food while he had been at the Gorge of Death. Delicious? Eat a lot if it is delicious. Locke watched Cal pushing a plate full of food toward him and continued to stuff food in his mouth. He felt as if something else would pop out if he did not do that. He suppressed his emotions by stuffing his face with food. Rayon just quietly watched as Locke did that. The black dragon's dark blue eyes then peeked to the side. The 6-year-old dragon continued to chew as he looked toward Cal. Cal sent Locke out once he was full and looked around the quiet tent. Looks like I can sleep for about 3 hours. He would be busy starting early in the morning. He needed to get at least a short nap in so that he could do that. Of course, there were still people standing guard, but one of his roles was to sleep right now. Rayon. What is it, human? Connect the video communication device, please. Cal thought about Locke and decided he needed to call that person. Honestly speaking, it is difficult enough to protect myself. It will be hard to protect that tall kid. Cal could not trust his own level of strength. That was why he was planning on using his network. He watched as Rayon prepared to take the video communication device out. By the way, human. What is it? Cal made eye contact with the 6-year-old dragon who stopped connecting the device and looked toward him. Rayon looked at Cal and asked, I cannot go through my first growth phase. Is that okay? Cal recalled how Rayon had buried himself underneath the blanket and cried about how he was not great and mighty because he could not activate his first growth phase. Cal wondered why Rayon was suddenly bringing that up. He thought it might be because of Locke's berserk transformation situation, but regardless, he chose to answer back after seeing the dragon's gaze that seemed to be begging for a response. Didn't I answer that last time? Don't ask me something so obvious. Is it okay if I am weak? What the heck is he talking about? Cal was in disbelief at what the scary dragon that was far from weak was saying before casually answering back. I think you were weak when I met you in the cave. The small paw touching the round video communication device flinched. The cave. Rayon recalled the moment he first met Cal. His power was restricted as he was kept under mana-restricting chains. He was weak back then. He was so weak to the point that he could not even run away and could only live in the dark cave, pretending that he didn't hear anything or think for himself. Then he was saved. He was saved even though he was not strong. Cal felt the rough hands caressing his head. He also heard Cal's quiet sigh and mumble about how a 6-year-old is still a child. Rayon, although I am weaker than you, I've lived at least 15 years more than you. But I am still weaker than you. I am not even as strong as you front paw. Is that a problem? Cal realized his mistake and quickly changed it up before looking at Rayon. It is not a problem at all. The young dragon's stern response made Cal nod his head as if he was saying, isn't that all that matters? Rayon went back to connecting the video communication device while peeking toward Cal. He then started to speak again. Human, why did you save me? I am just curious. Rayon could see Cal leaning on the chair as he responded back. Why did I save you? Just because? Why do you keep me by your side? Cal casually but honestly responded back to Rayon, who seemed to have more questions than usual today. Do you need a reason? Do we not need a reason? Why you saved me, and why you travel with me, do we really not need a reason for that? Rayon had not asked until now, but he had been curious. Everything in the world had a reason. All things were connected, and those connections led to different situations. He knew that there must be a reason Cal and he were traveling together. The dragon was curious as to what that reason might be. The human, who claimed to have lived at least 15 years more than he had, answered back. Your house is our house. Is that not enough? Your house is our house. Rayon repeated that statement in his head. He didn't know why, but it sounded catchy. Rayon thought about that for a while before storing it in his mind. He suddenly felt full. The 6-year-old dragon slowly started to smile. You're right. Human, that is enough. Cal didn't know what was going on, but sternly spoke to the once again energetic Rayon. The call. Ah, right. This great and mighty dragon will do it right away. The call was soon connected. Cal left the snickering Rayon on his lap as he finished the call. He then headed straight for bed. He would not be able to sleep properly once the battle began. 3 hours. These 3 hours were very precious. Cal laid down on the bed without any hesitation to get his precious sleep. Cal, who laid down in his uniform so that he could get up at the last possible moment, could see Rayon putting out the light inside the tent. Rayon then laid down next to Cal on the bed. However, Cal did not care as he closed his eyes. It was easy to fall asleep as he ate until he was full along with Locke. Human. Cal heard Rayon's voice right before he fell asleep. This 6-year-old really has a lot of questions today. The scariness of questions overwhelmed Cal. However, Rayon continued to ask his question. Human, would you save me again if you went back in time? Why is he like this today? I told you not to ask something so obvious. Human, will you save me again if I become that weak again and require you to save me? Cal moved his sleepy body and put his hand on Rayon's head. He felt himself slowly falling asleep as he answered back. Of course, I would save you. Cal then fell asleep. Rayon watched Cal for a long time before burrowing next to Cal's side and rolling up his body into a circle before closing his eyes. I will save you even if you are weak. Those words echoed in Rayon's mind. Thanks to that, he could easily fall asleep. Soon the light breathing noises of the adult and the young dragon filled the tent. The next day. Beep, beep, Cal squirmed after hearing the sound of the alarm. He needed to open his eyes but could not easily do so as he wanted to sleep some more. Ooh. Cal squirmed a bit more before forcing himself to open his eyes. He could see the ceiling of the dark tent. Beep, beep, the sound of the alarm. The alarm was sounding to wake Cal as well as the others nearby. Cal sat up on the bed. Egu, he sounded like an old man getting up. Cal lifted his hand up and tried to wipe the side of his eyes. He then flinched. Something is weird. It was too quiet right now. It should be very loud right now. Someone should be pushing on his stomach right now. But no, it was quiet. Cal heard something instead. Hoo-woo, hoo-woo. It was someone breathing, however, it was kind of rough breathing. Cal slowly turned his head. Beep, beep, the alarm was still going off around him. Cal's eyes slowly adjusted to the darkness and let him see the existence next to him. Yes, right next to him. This existence was curled up sleeping right next to him. He could see the curled up black dragon. Cal slowly reached his hand toward Rayon's forehead. Hoo-woo, hoo-woo, he had heard this type of breathing before. Cal's palm landed on Rayon's forehead. Cal started to frown. It was hot. It was too hot. Rayon's body was on fire. He could see the black wings fallen to the side without any strength. Rayon's face looked as if he had lost consciousness because his fever was too high. The battle was about to start in just moments. But Rayon is sick. Chapter 236, I will. You won. Rayon. Cal called out to Rayon. However, all he got back was the rough sound of Rayon's breathing. It was completely different than when he had caught a cold last time. Cal blinked after seeing Rayon, who seemed to be sleeping but had a serious fever and was breathing heavily. The first growth phase. That was the only thing he could think of. Cal recalled what Iruhaben had told him in the past. He's quite smart. He's able to learn 3 months' worth of content in only 1 month. But he is not growing. He's not hitting his first growth phase. It's about time for it to happen. I wonder what is going on. Rayon was a dragon who could not grow even though he had learned everything he needed to learn in order to activate it. Cal recalled what he had heard as he was falling asleep. Human, will you save me again if I become that weak again and require you to save me, damn it? Cal couldn't help but swear. It was not because he recalled what Rayon had told him. Beep beep, was there a need for an alarm to wake people up to continue to ring this loud? Should they be making this much noise when they should be wary of the enemy hearing them? Cal bit down on his lips after suddenly thinking about something. He then looked toward Rayon. The young dragon had Cal's video communication device in his spatial dimension, the guardian Knight Clope. He had only contacted Cal through that specific video communication device. Cal had ordered him to contact him through his personal video communication device if anything changed with the Indomitable Alliance's plans, or if any urgent situations came up. Of course, he did give a separate video communication device's information to him in case of emergencies. Beep beep, Calnim, a voice called for him from outside the tent. Choi Han was calling his name. Cal brushed his eyes with his hands. What if something happened during the 3 hours he was sleeping? No, what if it happened once Rayon became sick? If Clope had contacted him during that time, then Cal would not have been able to answer that call. He didn't have Rayon to connect him. Beep beep, this was not the sound of an alarm. It was a warning signal. It meant that something had happened. This is driving me nuts. Cal stopped frowning as best as possible and headed out of the tent. Plop. He could see soldiers hurriedly moving about outside the tent. Light continued to flash from the teleportation magic circle located at the base as well. The soldiers and knights stationed at the nearby city were all being teleported over. Calnim, the enemy is appearing on the other side of the gorge. Cal turned his head toward the direction of Choi Han's voice. He could see Choi Han, Hilsman, Mary, and Locke. He could also see some of the knights of the Royal Knights Brigade, the core members of the Roan Kingdom's forces. Cal opened his mouth to speak. Choi Han and Locke, come inside. The rest of you stand by. Choi Han found it odd that he was calling them inside, but followed Cal's order anyway. He could see the urgency in Cal's eyes. The enemy did not seem to be the problem. Had Clope betrayed them? That thought made Choi Han hurry. He then saw the darkness inside the tent and stopped walking. Calnim. Even Locke, who was following behind him, stopped in shock. Choi Han and Locke could see Rayon, who was on the bed with his eyes closed. The expression on Choi Han's face changed. The confusion on his face quickly disappeared. I was wondering if the Guardian Knight betrayed us. This must be why you didn't say anything about the current situation, Calnim. Choi Han realized that Cal had not received any information from Clope right now. He felt upset after seeing Rayon being sick, even though they were in an urgent situation. Calnim. But seeing that Cal, who should be the most upset, was calm made Choi Han be able to calmly continue to speak. We noticed 10 minutes ago that the enemy was using teleportation magic circles to do large-scale transportations. That is why we are gathering our forces as well. They were using the large teleportation magic circles that the Mage Brigade had prepared for the gathering. Although it is 3 hours earlier than expected, all 5 large teleportation magic circles are currently being used to gather the Breck Kingdom's forces to the Gorge of Death. The Gorge of Death cut through the western continent from east to west. They had placed 5 teleportation magic circles by the center of the route that was the shortest distance to the nearby Breck Kingdom city. The 3rd magic circle was located at the center of this route. That was where Cal was currently stationed. Rosalind is currently at the border of the Breck Kingdom and the Gorge of Death in order to prepare for the enemy attack. Cal did not say anything before turning to look on top of his bed. The only person who knew about Cal's group's situation and was able to use a video communication device was Rosalind now that Rayon was out of commission. However, she was currently waiting to fight against the enemy. I guess Iruhaben Nim will not be possible. It was difficult to contact the ancient dragon right now. Many different thoughts passed through Cal's head. At the same time, he remembered something he had heard as Kim Rock-Soo when he first started a proper job. You must be calm. A person who handles information must always have a cool heart. Got it, newbie? It was what his former team leader had told him. The voice of the man who noticed Kim Rock-Soo's talents and helped him grow was always calm. Although his insides were boiling, Cal's cold gaze looked toward Choi Han. However, he called for someone else. Locke. Yes, sir. You will stand by my side no matter what. No matter what. Got it? Locke clenched his fist and responded back. Yes, yes, sir. Locke's mind was boiling as well. Beep, beep. Locke's mind became complicated along with the loud sound of the alarm. Cal turned and headed toward the bed once Locke responded. He used a blanket to wrap the curled-up Rayon. He covered him from head to tail. The small dragon that was only 1m20 cm in length was quickly covered up. Cal picked him up and held him in his arms. He could not leave him here. However, he could also not stay here by his side, so what else could he do? He had to carry him with him. Choi Han. Choi Han started to speak as soon as Cal called for him. I will stay by the 3 of your side at all times today. That will be my priority. Cal, Locke, and Rayon. Choi Han was clear about where he needed to be today. The battle was an issue, and he wanted to help Rosalind protect her kingdom. However, his family came first to him. What are you talking about? However, Choi Han could see Cal frowning at him. He seemed to have his usual grumbling expression. Choi Han, you destroy them before they get here. Destroy the enemy before they arrive. Choi Han's expression turned odd. At the same time, Cal headed over to Locke and handed him the wrapped-up Rayon. Cal's arms that were holding Rayon up were slightly shaking. Although he was not very long, the now chubby Rayon was quite heavy. Here. Excuse me? Yes, sir. Locke carefully held Rayon in confusion. He could feel Rayon's weight in his arms. Once he looked down, he could see the heavily breathing Rayon that no one else would be able to see. Locke put some strength into his arms after feeling an unexplainable feeling. The existence that he thought was strong because he was a dragon was not as heavy as he expected and was currently sick. Rayon was also part of Locke's family. Are you not coming? Ah, yes, sir. Locke quickly followed behind Cal. Stick to my back without getting away at all today. Got it? Yes, sir. Locke understood Cal's intentions. He was trying to protect the 2 of them. Although he had a calm expression on his face, how worried must he be on the inside? Locke knew exactly what he had to do during this battle. Carry the sick Rayon. Follow behind Cal properly. They weren't much, but the fact that he now had something to do during the battle made Locke's body start to fill with strength. Wolves became stronger when they had someone or something to protect. There was only a slight difference between loneliness and a sense of belonging. That was a fact that neither Locke nor Cal knew much about. Choi Han watched as Cal left the tent with Locke. Plop. The flap was lifted again, and Cal stood in front of the Roan Kingdom's core forces that were looking at him. Mary Hilsman, the Mage Brigade, and the 1st Royal Knights Brigade. Beep, beep. Although the alarm was going off and it was chaotic, the Roan Kingdom's forces were waiting for Cal without any worries. Cal stood in front of them as Choi Han came out of the tent and walked up next to Cal as well. Cal started to speak at that moment. Our goal for today is simple. Cal clearly explained their goal to the group. Choose defense over attack. The Silver Shield, the source of the power that people knew about, was Rayon. The defensive strength of Cal's shield was only possible because Rayon was with him. It was impossible to expect him to be able to do the same feats today. However, Cal could not show his weakness to them. He could only give them a different order. Do not go far. Do not be alone either. Make sure you are always moving in groups of at least 3 people. Although they came to help the Breck Kingdom, Cal cared more about his life and the lives of the people from his territory first. He was making sure that he, and the people close to him, survived. That was why Cal was telling the Roan Kingdom's people to choose to act defensively. Except for one person. Choi Han clenched the scabbard in his hand. He nodded his head instead of responding to Cal, who was looking at him, go out before defending. That was why he was the only person who was told to destroy the enemy before they arrived. Choi Han understood the meaning of that clearly. Rayon was not available. Then he was the only one left. Cal started to speak again as Choi Han started to smile. Everybody to your positions. The mage's robes and knight's armors made different noises as their formations started to move in different directions. Cal started to walk somewhere as well. Mary, Hilsman, Choi Han, and Locke were next to him. Did something happen to Rayon Nim? The mechanical voice of Mary was shaking for once. Cal looked toward the black robe and the concerned Hilsman next to her as he responded back. Something came up. He could see the 2 of them flinch. However, Cal did not say anything to them like, "Relax, you needed to face your troubles head-on." That was the only way to accurately determine the situation and find a path out. Cal explained this fact to the 2 of them. That is why you both need to make sure that you are alert so that nothing happens to anyone else. Mary and Hilsman closed their mouths at that response. Do not get hurt and stay alert. Mary's shaking lips and Hilsman's concerned expression quickly returned to normal. Cal turned away from the silent duo and headed toward someone. Rosalind. He needed to go to her. She was the one who would have the best grasp of the current situation, and he needed to ask for her help. Cal could see Rosalind's back. Swish, swish, the wind was blowing. It was still dark as it was very early in the morning. The Gorge of Death was made of extremely deep cliffs that twisted left and right for hundreds of kilometers. Rosalind was at the deepest cliff that was the border between the Breck Kingdom and the Askasan Kingdom. She was standing there looking at the Askasan forces on the other side of the cliff. Next to her was the Mage Brigade and the large teleportation magic circle. Pot. The large teleportation magic circle continued to flash non-stop as knights and soldiers continued to appear. However, Cal did not look at any of that. Just what the... He heard Vice Captain Hilsman's voice, however, he could not pay attention to him at all. He looked across the cliff. It was the enemy land. Many flashes of light were appearing there as well. Another light flashed on Cal's side. It was the light that was coming off of the large teleportation magic circle. Tens of those lights were flashing on the other side of the cliff. Seems fitting for the final battle. The other side of the cliff. A large number of enemies were looking at them as they stood by the gorge. It was an impossibly large number of enemy forces. Flap, flap. The flags that symbolized that they were part of the Indomitable Alliance were fluttering in the rough winds on the other side of the gorge. It was an unbelievable number in comparison to the number of soldiers that had attacked the Karo Kingdom or the Roan Kingdom. Furthermore, the northern lands, including the Perun Kingdom, were all kingdoms of knights. Knights were stronger on the ground. And if they are strong on the ground, they would naturally have strong soldiers as well. Other than the river at the bottom of the long cliff cutting between the Breck Kingdom and the Askasan Kingdom, no source of water existed here. I expected it, but seeing it in person makes it feel real that there are a lot of them. No, there are more than what that crazy bastard told us. Excuse me. There were more enemies than what Clope had told him. Specifically, there were too many soldiers. Miss Rosalind. Young Master Cal. Cal's hand was placed on Rosalind's shoulder. A single question continued to fill his mind. He quickly whispered in Rosalind's ear. How are they going to cross with that many people? That many people. Just what were they going to do to get all of them across the gorge? Chapter 237. I will. You too. The gorge of death that splits the two kingdoms is still there. No matter how strong they are on land, the enemy cannot get here if they do not have a way to cross the gorge. In fact, the Breck Kingdom's mages had the advantage as they could use long-distance attacks to strike from the other side of the gorge. They had a lot of soldiers, but it didn't matter if they couldn't attack. Young Master Cal, that's what I wanted to ask you. Did something happen? Rosalind had been waiting for Cal until now. She was waiting for Cal to bring her information from Clope. However, Cal's question made her realize that Cal had no information as well. Rayon is sick. Rosalind's expression changed. She quickly took out a video communication device and handed it to Cal. Where should I connect you to? His Highness, Prince Alberu. Rosalind did not say anything else as she started to channel her mana in order to connect the video communication device. However, she did not need to do that. Beep, beep, her video communication device started to glow red. She immediately connected the call and handed it to Cal. Cal. Your Highness, what did he say? Alberu Crossman was the only other person's contact information that Clope had. It was because Alberu was the only person who would know what Cal was planning to do and take care of things properly. Cal was certain that Clope had told Alberu how they were going to move the troops. Cal was waiting for Alberu's response. It was at that moment. Commander Nim, the soldiers are stepping back. A knight shouted toward Rosalind. At the same time, Cal could see the enemy soldiers moving in formations. The large number of soldiers were all moving at the same time. Boom, 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 the ground started to shake. At the same time, a path appeared from in between the soldiers. Cal heard Alberu's voice at that moment. Apparently, they made wings. They supposedly got the idea from seeing the necromancers flying monsters in the Hennetus territories battle. Alberu Crossman urgently continued to speak. Cal could see the bears walking through the path between the soldiers. Since it was difficult to control the wyverns without Clope, they supposedly killed them all. The dwarves then used the wyverns' bones, steel, and magic stones to make wings. They were able to make multiple wings with every wyvern. Boom, boom, boom. The ground started to shake with every step the bears took. They were the Beast People tribe that was known to be the most numerous of the strong Beast People, the Bear tribe. There were large wings on each of their shoulders. They were bone wings that were imitating wyvern wings. The large bears in their berserk states were able to carry those wings. Rosalind's urgent voice could be heard. Your Highness, how many of them are there? She looked toward the bears that were starting to appear on the other side and asked as Alberu immediately responded back. At least 1,000. 1,000. That was not a small number. There were at least 1,000 enemies that could fly in the air. It's not just the bears. It is 1,000, including the dwarves. Cal could see the strong but short dwarves with smaller wings behind the bears, the Flame Dwarf tribe. They appeared for the first time in this war. They were all short but muscular and had strong-looking weapons in their hands. Furthermore, dwarves in general were known for being physically strong. Rosalind watched them and started to get a headache. How are those wings activated? If they are using magic stones, it has to be using magic. Can't the mages just shoot them down with magic when they are in the air? She then suddenly had a different question. How will the soldiers cross over? Cal and Alberu soon answered that question for her. That's not it, is it? One more thing. Alberu immediately responded back. Screech, screech. They could hear the sounds of machines. It sounded as if extremely heavy wheels were moving. Commander Nim, the knights are stepping back as well. Now the enemy knights were stepping back as well. Tens of thousands of enemies were moving now. A large item appeared between those moving soldiers and knights. They made a bridge. Something to connect the two sides of the gorge in multiple locations. The dwarves had announced that they were going to build bridges. The 1,000 soldiers with wings are meant to fight until the bridges can be installed. The 1,000 flyers were not aiming to attack them directly. The enemy was aiming to defend as well. Their jobs were to protect the bridges. That is a bridge. Rosalind could not trust Alberu's words. No, it is not a bridge. That was not a bridge. There are magic bombs on it. She looked toward the large item being pushed on top of wheels. She was certain that there were magic bombs inside of it. Wang, she could tell by the vibrations coming from the other side of the gorge. They were full of magic bombs that were on the verge of exploding. Rosalind heard Cal's voice at that moment. The soldiers and knights are continuing to withdraw. It looks like their goal was to cover those things. Their goal was to prevent the Roan kingdom from seeing. Rosalind looked toward the wings and magic bomb that the soldiers and knights had been covering up. Cal continued to speak. The cliff. A path will be created if you destroy both sides of the cliff. I suppose that is a bridge of sort as well. Rosalind looked down. She could see the ground. The cliffs were on separate sides of the gorge. However, if both of these cliffs crumbled, the debris from the cliffs would cover up the gorge. Rosalind could see the enemy continuing to withdraw. They were stepping back as if they were doing their best to avoid the impact. Destroy the gorge of death. Rosalind then turned toward Cal. Alberu started to speak again. He said that the dwarves had one goal. They are trying to create a path for them to be able to come down to the south at any time. This was the final battle. However, it was the final battle to prepare for another start. They will destroy the gorge that hinders their ability to do that. The dwarves had prepared for this final battle with thoughts about destroying one of the 5 forbidden regions. That is why the Askasan kingdom and the Norland kingdom moved all of their forces in order to show their support for the dwarves' decisions. It explained the sudden increase in the number of soldiers. This was the way of the rest of the Indomitable Alliance showing their support. It would mean that they would not lose, even if they lost this battle. It would give them the option of planning for the future. These damn bastards. Rosalind could not understand the thoughts of people who were pushed into a corner. That was why she had not expected such a situation. That was also why the sights in front of her were making her anxious. Rosalind's expression became cold as she started to speak. Back. Everybody move back. She then gave another order. All mages get into attack formation. Rayon was sick right now. Rosalind felt that she was the only one here who could take charge of the magic. She gave an order to the mages who were teleporting the soldiers over. Stop the teleportations. Excuse me. Magic bombs and the resulting explosion. It would be more difficult with the soldiers here. The soldiers may end up getting dragged into the explosion as well. She needed to delay their teleportation. Furthermore, magic was more important than the soldiers right now. They needed long-distance attacks. Everyone prepare to attack. She decided to have the mages responsible for the teleportation magic circles to join in on the attack as well. The greatest defense was completely sealing the enemy's attack. Rosalind hid her anxiety as she continued to give order after order. She then heard something she did not want to hear. Boom, 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 the bears with the large wings. They started to run. They started to run toward the cliff. Hundreds of them jumped off the cliff as if they wanted to get help flying up. Boom, boom. Rosalind's pupils started to shake as she watched them move. She also heard something else she did not want to hear. Wang, the large container with 10s, no? An unknown number of magic bombs started to make noises as well. The device activating it seemed to be slow, however, it was progressing bit by bit. It seemed as if it would be flung this way soon. Is alchemy mixed in as well? All sorts of thoughts were on her mind right now. It was at that moment. Miss Rosalind, she could hear Cal's voice. Young Master Cal, Rosalind, who looked toward Cal with despair on her face, flinched. Consider it as payment in advance. Cal handed her a small pouch. Rosalind could not help but flinch at Cal's sudden action. It was because of what was inside the slightly opened pouch. She could feel large vibrations inside. It was as if the contents were responding to the magic bombs. A large amount of mana could be felt inside the back. Rosalind received the pouch with slightly shaking hands and opened it up. It was a spatial pocket bag. There are hundreds of highest-grade magic stones. Rosalind could not breathe for a moment. Just one highest-grade magic stone was extremely precious. However, hundreds of them were gathered together and resonating. Use them. Cal walked past her after telling her to use the magic stones. He then walked over to the mages manning the teleportation magic circle. This was the large teleportation magic circle in this base. Does the blinking light mean that the other side is requesting teleportation? Excuse me? Yes, that is correct. Please let them through. Excuse me? But the mages looked toward Rosalind and the enemies across the gorge. Please hurry. Rosalind nodded her head as Cal asked once more, and the mages activated the teleportation magic circle again. It was at that moment. Boom, 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 the first group had lifted up into the air. Ah! Rosalind could see approximately 100 bears shooting up into the sky. They were flying. The wings only moved a little bit. It didn't seem normal, however. They managed to do their job of keeping the bears up in the air. They were standing in a line and staring as if they were ready to fly toward the Breck Kingdom's forces at any moment. Attack magic and flight magic. She thought of a way to block them. She clenched the pouch in her hand and immediately turned toward the mage brigade. It was now a battle against time. I will help as well. Mary picked up her spatial pocket bag that was full of bones. Rosalind smiled and walked toward the mage brigade. It was at that moment. Pat! The teleportation magic circle flashed, swoosh, the wind brushed by Rosalind and blew toward the source of the light. Rosalind turned her head. Her long red hair fluttered as she saw someone appear. It has been too long. Gashan Nim. The shaman Gashan. The leader of the tiger tribe had appeared with the tigers. Rosalind could see the wind gathering around Gashan. She stopped walking toward the mage brigade. She then heard Cal's voice again at that moment. Gashan, use your wind incantation. Also, call your crows over. Gashan used the crows as if they were familiars. They had helped quite a bit in order to deliver messages when they had destroyed Arm's fleet over the ocean between the western continent and eastern continent last year. However, there were many other ways to use them as well. Ho ho ho, do they just need to bother those large crows in the air? Large crows. Gashan's expression was calm as he pointed to the bears. A shaman. Unlike mages, he could directly use the power of nature. The Gorge of Death had the strongest winds in all 5 of the forbidden regions. Gashan revealed his sharp fangs as he could not hide his excitement. At the same time, Cal started to speak to Rosalind. Miss Rosalind, let's move them to the other side. Cal was pointing to the tigers. Rosalind looked toward them as well. Numerous tigers started to appear through the teleportation magic circle. GRRR. Their steps became stronger as they walked out of the teleportation magic circle. The tigers were slowly growing after turning berserk. They then started to laugh. They were enjoying Cal saying that he would send them to the location of the enemy. The ally mages and soldiers heard another set of noises as they gulped after seeing the scary expressions on the tigers' faces. Another 100 enemies followed the first group into the air. Boom, boom. Boom, that noise made them miss a different noise. Pat. It was the sound of the teleportation magic circle activating again. However, the mages and Cal noticed it. He walked toward the teleportation magic circle. Long time no see. Last night. Cal had contacted someone after learning that Locke was unable to fight. Flick. A strand of water wrapped around the woman's arm. Witira. The future whale queen. Whales were weaker than dragons, but still able to contend with them. At the same time, they were also the strongest in the world other than dragons. Whales. The woman who was the leader of the whales. The humpback whale beast person, Witira, clenched onto her water whip as she responded back to Cal's greeting with a smile. Young Master Cal, I didn't want to come alone, so they came with me. Young Master Nim, it has been a while. It has been a while. It was the half-blooded whale Pazetin and Archie, the greatest whale warrior. Witira had brought the 2 of them with her. Hoo-woo, hoo-woo. Cal listened to Rayon's rough breathing coming from behind him as he started to speak to the beast people. The whales and tigers were known to be the most aggressive of the beast people. Cal was not pushing them toward defense, as he had done with the others. He saw Choi Han pulling out his sword and told them to do what they did best, destroy everything. Chapter 238, I will, you three, destroy it all. The first people to respond were the ones who were always with Cal. Choi Han. Rosalind called out to Choi Han. At the same time, she clenched one of the highest-grade magic stones in her hand. Choi Han started to run toward the cliff's edge. Uwuong mana started to vibrate around Rosalind. Her other hand was busy casting a magic spell. She made a total of 5 movements. The moment all of her movements ended, tap, 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 Choi Han kicked off the ground. Rosalind started to smile. She had been the most level-headed one in other words, she had no sense of fear. She was able to throw away her position as a princess and did not put a limit on herself by believing that she could become the tower master of a magic tower. However, level-headed did not mean calm. Her gaze headed toward the enemies. You're all dead. Her hand headed toward Choi Han. A wind surrounded Choi Han's body. Flight magic. Rosalind sent Choi Han into the sky and then proceeded with her next actions. Mage Brigades 1, 2, and 3 prepare the strongest attack magic circles. She threw a highest-grade magic stone to both the Roan Kingdom and Breck Kingdom's respective mage captains who were approaching her. There was no hesitation in her movements. The captains caught the highest-grade magic stones in shock. The 4th Mage Brigade will create a haste magic circle in order to send our allies to the back. Another highest-grade magic stone was thrown to the captain of the 4th Brigade. The Royal Mage's number 1 disciple, Count Ekros, approached her at that moment. He was the vice-captain of the 3rd Mage Brigade. Commander Nim, what about flight magic? The Tiger Tribe, Whale Tribe, and the experts on Cal's side. They needed flight magic in order to send these strong individuals to fight against the bears. Making others flying in the air was not an easy magic to accomplish. You needed to be at least a middle-grade mage in order to do that type of magic. I will do it. Excuse me? Rosalind did not even look at Count Ekros as mana started to appear around her. I can take care of it. Return to the 3rd Mage Brigade, Vice Captain. Count Ekros flinched and stepped back. 1, 2, 3. The red mana that flowed out of her body became like threads as they wrapped around her. No, it was as if waves were floating around her. Ekros, you cannot consider Princess Rosalind Nim with regular standards. There is a reason she threw away her position as a princess. Ekros remembered what the Breck Kingdom's royal mage, his master, had told him before. He then looked around. There were numerous mages when they combined the Roan Kingdom and Breck Kingdom's mages. Ekros had never seen so many battle mages gathered together before. No, he had never seen so many mages gathered together like this at all. It was because there was no magic tower right now. A magic tower. That was a place where hundreds of mages would gather together. However, the current magic tower had fallen. Ekros looked toward Rosalind's back. So many threads of red mana were surrounding her that he could not see her anymore. The woman who was leading the mage brigades seemed as fiery and explosive as her red hair. Ekros. I'm looking forward to Princess Rosalind Nim, no Mage Rosalind's future. So pay close attention and learn from her during the battle, Master. I think I understand the future that you are looking forward to. Count Ekros turned away from Rosalind. He quickly started to walk to his position. At the same time, Rosalind looked toward the person standing next to her and started to smile. Don't worry, young Master Cal, she jokingly added on. I'll make sure to pay you properly for all of the magic stones. I will give you a discount if you buy them in bulk. Rosalind chuckled at Cal's response and closed her eyes before opening them back up and starting to shout. At the same time, the red threads floating around her shot toward a single direction. Please move. The tigers reacted to her shout. The ground rumbled as the large tigers started to move. Shaman Gashin's voice could be heard from within the group of tigers. O wind, please bring forth the black wings. Pook. Gashin's staff was stabbed into the ground. They could then hear cawing coming from the distance. Caw, caw, caw. A black cloud seemed to be heading toward them. The black cloud headed toward them with the rising sun on its back. However, the black cloud was not just coming from one direction. Tens, no hundreds of crows were flying toward them from all directions. Rosalind and Gashin made eye contact. Gashin smiled and started to speak. They will be the ground for the tigers that were able to fly up thanks to your help. These crows would become temporary footholds with the tigers every step in the air. They will also blind the enemies. The crows would gather together in order to prevent the enemies from being able to see. In that moment of temporary blindness, the tigers and Choi Han will strike. Wonderful. I like it. Rosalind nodded her head, closed her eyes, and opened up her hands. The highest-grade magic stone floated up as the red mana threads followed her movements to wrap around the tigers' bodies. Rosalind's red hair was glowing red like the rising sun. Boom, 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 boom. The tigers kicked off the ground with force. The red threads sent the tigers up into the air. Plop. The mana threads connected to Rosalind ripped, however, the connection was still there. The red threads surrounded the tigers and slowly became transparent until they became the wind. Kehe, we meet those bear bastards once again. The tigers split up. They each had to handle tens of bear tribe enemies. It was an one versus many type of situation. However, the tigers could not hide their excitement. You bastards are the tigers that killed our brown bear tribe members. The tigers scoffed at the brown bears that were growling at them. Why are you blaming us when it was your own actions that killed them? Plop. The tigers could feel the crows flying underneath their feet and lending them their bodies. They heard their leader speak from the ground. Run like you are in the mountains? That was Gashan's order. The mountains were where the tigers could be at their strongest. Run as if they were in the mountains. One of the tigers licked his lips. He kicked off the crow underneath his foot. The tiger's white dojo uniform fluttered in the wind. Can you handle over 10 of us on your own? The bears moved their wings and rushed toward the tiger that was coming toward them. The tiger started to laugh. How would someone wearing around some obnoxious set of wings defeat a tiger of a mountain? The tigers who had the black ground, crows, and the transparent wind had nothing slowing them down. They were able to easily jump over the bears that were rushing toward them with those uncomfortable wings. They were moving as if they were the ground that was rumbling with an earthquake. The tiger started to move. He then landed behind the bear who was talking to him. The tiger moved his hand and grabbed onto the fake wings. Why, you eek, the bear struggled, but he could not move very well with the tiger holding onto the wings. However, the rest of the bears rushed toward the tiger at that moment from the north, south, east, west, and above. Anybody could see that the tiger had nowhere to run. You can't go anywhere. You will end up dying here. Ahahaha. The bear with the wings grabbed started to laugh. You bear bastards are so noisy. What? The bear raised his head. He could see the tens of bears rushing toward the tiger, however, the tiger was smiling. The bear that had his wings grabbed suddenly got the chills. The tiger started to speak joyfully. We are on a mountain, a mountain. There are no flat plains on a mountain. The gentle smile seemed vicious because of his fangs. When it comes to a mountain, you have either the top or the bottom. Perhaps. It was the moment the bear's eyes opened wide open. The tiger kicked on the black ground again. He then started to descend. The gorge of death. The tiger fell into the darkness of the gorge with a bear in hand. Why, you crazy? The bear felt chills from the wind brushing by his face. He then started to feel fear from the laughter of the tiger behind him. The tiger put some strength into the hands that were holding the large wings. Screech, crack, he ripped the wings apart. They were broken. The tiger continued to break the wings as they fell. The bear could see the pieces of the wings falling down underneath him. Pieces of bones and metal. They all started to fall one by one, and finally... I should save the magic stone, though. The magic stone did not fall. Instead, the bear felt a hand starting to choke him. Goodbye. Ugh, the bear could not breathe. The bear had not been able to do anything because of the large wings that had hindered him from moving properly. His neck was grasped by the tiger's hand. Ugh, ugh! The bear's neck tilted to the side with a groan. He had lost consciousness. The tiger let go of the bear's neck. The bear continued to fall to the ground. However, the tiger took a step forward. Tap! The crows lent him their bodies as footholds. The tiger raised his head. He could see the gazes of the bears looking down at him. He started to smile toward them. All right, let's go up. The tiger casually walked up toward the enemies as if he was walking up a mountain path. There was no fear or hesitation in his walk, but he could see the slightest trace of fear in the eyes of the berserk bears. This is why you bear bastards are useless. Who cares if you are smart? When you can't use your numbers' advantage, you are all just cowards. The white dojo uniform's wide sleeves fluttered in the wind. The tiger felt the breeze by his side as he headed back up to the sky. This was the case throughout the area. All of the tigers were roaming through the sky, showing the bears the fear of those who ruled the mountains. Rosalind opened her eyes. She had safely delivered the transparent wind to the tigers. Her eyes were bloodshot. Those bloodshot eyes of hers looked toward a direction. Boom, boom, boom. She was looking at the other side of the cliff. The winged bears who had yet to fly up had changed directions. They were now heading toward her, the location of the Breck Kingdom's forces instead of the sky. Rosalind looked toward the round container behind the approximately 300 bears running toward her. She heard a mechanical noise as lights started to surround the round container. Dwarves with wings were protecting the container along with the enemy mages. Rosalind started to smile again. Boom, she heard the ground rumble again as hundreds of bears started to rush toward her. They were dodging the tiger tribe and the crows while trying to destroy the mage brigades. Rosalind stretched her hands forward and shouted, 3. The ground underneath her feet started to rumble. The robes of the mage brigade's mages fluttered while a group of mages who were standing in a circle around a highest-grade magic stone all reached their hands out as well. They could feel the fluctuation of mana in the air. Rosalind was preparing a spell to destroy the wings of the bears flying toward her. I will kill half of those flying bastards in the gorge. 2. Then I need to cast a spell while making sure it doesn't affect the tigers. Rosalind turned her head. She made eye contact with the shaman, Gashan. Caw, caw. The crows started to create paths. Routes for the attack magic spells to go through were starting to be created one by one, 3 for the mage brigades and 1 for Rosalind. A total of 4 paths were created. They could see the bears crossing the gorge. We need to first attack the bears and then attack or stop the container. Although it might strain her body, Rosalind planned on using multiple large-scale attack magic spells in a row. Since there were a lot of highest-grade magic stones, she needed to block that container even if it was painful for her to do. She needed to make it stop moving or have it blow up on the enemy side. She bit down on her lips. With that size, it'll be a problem even if it goes off on the other side. The shock from the magic bomb would reach the Breck Kingdom's side as well. However, it was still better than going off on the Breck Kingdom's side. She opened her mouth to speak. 1. The attack would start as soon as she said that word. Oh, Miss Rosalind. She heard someone stopping her at that moment. She could see Cal as well as people moving behind Cal. Tap, tap, one woman floated up into the sky. Her hair that was blue like the ocean fluttered in the air. At the same time, a large water whip cut through the air. Flick. Dodge. It's the whale tribe? The bears urgently dodged the whip. However, the whip was not aiming for the bears. The thunderbolt-like whip reached the other side of the gorge of death. Bang! A loud noise was heard as the ground on the other side of the cliff collapsed. In its place was a water whip. However, the whip soon disappeared. Instead, the woman with the whip around her arm used the pull from her whip to land on the other side. Witira was the first to land in the enemy territory. She picked her whip back up and split the water whip in her hands. The whip easily divided into 2. Witira started to move with a whip in each hand. Rosalind watched this before slowly starting to speak again. 1. The bear tribe's voices filled the area right before she gave the final order. Damn it! Half of you chase the whale. The other half of you do as we planned. Hurry up! The people leading the bears sped up as they flew toward the Breck Kingdom's forces. The sight of hundreds of wings flying forward like arrows gave them the chills. Miss Rosalind. However, Rosalind could not say anything. Instead, she looked toward Cal, who continued to call her name. It was when the bears were only about 10 meters away from the Breck Kingdom's forces. The Breck Kingdom's people flinched in fear. At the same time, all of the Roan Kingdom's people's gazes went toward a single person. The person receiving these gazes, Cal, had a silver thread coming out of his hand. At the same time, a loud noise echoed on both sides of the Gorge of Death. Boom! A silver shield appeared and crashed against the bears. Ugh! Cal's mouth started to bleed. Rosalind could not understand why Cal was defending her. Bang! 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 The bear's wings and Cal's shield continued to crash into each other. Rosalind started to speak. "Young Master Cal, you don't even have Rayon," the power that always protected Cal's silver shield. Rosalind knew about Rayon's shield. That was why she had watched Cal activating the shield with shaking eyes before urgently speaking. "I just need to use attack magic in order to defend against the bears, and then find a way to stop that container. It should be possible because we have the whale tribe and the tiger tribe as well." Rosalind could see Cal smiling at that moment. Although he was smiling, he looked as if he was annoyed. "Miss Rosalind, I will keep it short." Cough, black blood started to come out of Cal's mouth again. This made Cal's complexion turn worse, however. Nobody else was able to see it due to their fatigue. "The whales will not block the container, neither will the tigers." "Just what not block the container? They're not going to stop the magic bombs." "Miss Rosalind, you and half of the mage brigade attack the container, while the other half will create shields and prepare to run." "Won't the bomb go off? Tens of bombs will explode." The bears were still crashing into the silver shield as they spoke. Rosalind quickly continued to speak after seeing the calm and confident gaze in Cal's eyes. The mages were waiting for her to attack. "If the bomb goes off, a bridge will definitely be created. The enemy soldiers will cross over using the rubbles as steps. We will have a lot of casualties because of their numbers. The enemy will not be able to cross." "Excuse me." Cal made sure Locke and Rayon were still behind him. He then coughed up some more blood and felt much better. He had a smile that would cause Rayon to say, "Human, why are you smiling like that?" as he quickly tried to forget about the emptiness from Rayon not saying it. He then opened his mouth to speak. He was waiting for the moment the gorge started to shake. The enemy will be met with anger. The dragon's rage will shoot up. Dragon's rage? Ah! Rosalind let out a gasp. She had forgotten about it. Earlier this year, Cal had the tigers plant them inside the gorge. It was a pillar of fire that would reach the heavens. It was a pillar of fire that was multiple grades higher than the one that the alchemist's bell tower has made. The pillars of fire that the ancient dragon Iruhaben had created were quietly sleeping underneath the Gorge of Death. "We will start to trick the enemy from here on." Cal's smile was etched in Rosalind's eyes. Chapter 239. "I will. You four." However, although he was smiling, Cal's mind was working faster than ever before. He needed to hurry. Rayon was unable to fight. Cal was someone who always thought about the worst-case scenario. He looked down at the video communication device in his hand. It was still connected to Crown Prince Alberu Crossman. Cal started to speak to Alberu, who should have heard his conversation with Rosalind. "Your Highness." Ha-ha-ha laughter was coming from the video communication device. Alberu looked at Cal from the other side of the screen. The flame dwarves, their enemies, were trying to destroy one of the 5 forbidden regions. The Gorge of Death cut through a portion of the continent. They were trying to destroy that gap between the 2 portions. Normally, he would be thinking that the enemy was crazy, but it's nothing compared to the bastard who already installed the pillar of fire into the gorge. Alberu had been shocked by Cal's scale before he could be shocked by the enemy's scale. However, he still understood it. Yes, this bastard has always been crazy. He was something who was trying to destroy the Gorge of Death before the enemy could do it. And there was someone who had the same thought that Cal had. And I'm the same. Alberu immediately started to speak. There was no need to listen to Cal anymore. There was a card that the Roan Kingdom, specifically Alberu, could put to use after the Pillar of Fire was activated. It was already set in stone. "I will make sure it is ready. I will wait for your signal. Stop bleeding every time. You're rich, use some potions or something." "I understand, Your Highness." Rosalind's mouth opened and closed a few times after watching Cal and Alberu casually chat with each other. However, she could not get any words out. Has Crown Prince Alberu always been like this? Furthermore, aren't the 2 of them too calm? Is it because it is not happening in the Roan Kingdom? However, Rosalind knew she could not think like that. Cal had been the one who had bled the most until now. Bang, 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 the wings continued to bang against the shield. Ah, really? Cal wiped the blood off of his mouth each time as he sent out an even thicker silver strand of light from his hand. The shield was not shaking, even without the help of Rayon's shield. Looks like I don't need to eat more yet. Are you trying to sacrifice yourself? Cal listened to the disappointed glutton priestess and the repetitive super rock before purposely putting on an expression of struggle. However, there was still calmness in his voice. Miss Rosalind, please hurry. Activate your magic as soon as I give you the signal. Rosalind finally managed to say something. All right, she agreed and turned her head. One of the knights who were waiting near her quickly approached her after seeing her looking at him. Rosalind quickly gave an order to the knight. Cal, who was listening to her give the order, had a look of struggle on his face as he said a few things as well. That made Rosalind start to chuckle. She could manage to laugh even though they were in the middle of a battle. She looked at Cal with an expression that was full of mischief. You're trying to make me use everything I have. Please give me your best, Rosalind. Rosalind canceled the attack magic spell that were ready to go in her hands. She then moved her hand toward the pouch with the highest grade magic stones. Rosalind. She had become obsessed with magic after seeing the royal mage cast some spells when she was a little girl. She then quickly realized that she was talented in magic. She could feel mana even when she was just standing still. She had decided to bet everything on that feeling. That was why she had taken the courses to become a queen during the day and studied magic all night until she reached a certain level. Finally, she had earned her freedom through magic. Furthermore, she had seen a miracle during that freedom: dragons, Rayon and Iruhaben. Rosalind had focused on each of Iruhaben's lessons, as well as the magic that the dragons used. They were using spells that went beyond the limits of human mages. Although she too was human, Rosalind wanted to surpass that limit. I am a very greedy person. Rosalind knew that she was a very greedy person. Why? Because she wanted to surpass the limits of humans. After experiencing that miracle, her goal was to reach that same level before she died. After escaping from a burden called royalty, having a goal of overcoming a giant hurdle was worth challenging for her entire life. Please give me your best, Rosalind. Cal had said that while calling her Rosalind instead of Miss Rosalind. She decided to follow the words of the only person to realize her greed. Forget Iruhaben Nim. My current skills are not even enough to reach the level of Rayon's paws. However, you did not need to follow the standard procedures all the time. Clang. The sound of stones clanging against each other could be heard in her hand. Her hand that was inside the bag of magic stones came back out. She then started to take out magic stone after magic stone. She turned around after holding tens of magic stones in her hands. She then headed toward the mage brigade. I'll be waiting for you. Cal nodded his head at Rosalind's statement before he looked toward the front. Why, young Master Nim, stay behind me. Yes, yes, sir. Locke bit down on his lips after seeing Rosalind with bloodshot eyes and a different atmosphere than usual, the bloodied Cal and the sick Rayon in his arms. Boom, boom, boom. Locke's heart started to beat faster and stronger, fear and concern about the battle. The tall Locke's body could not be covered by the shorter Cal's back. That was why he could see the beings that were crashing into Cal's shield. Furthermore, he could also see the tigers and Choi Han in the sky. They looked to be in dangerous situations. Stop paying attention to useless things. Focus on your tasks. Locke's shoulders flinched at Cal's comment. My tasks. His tasks were to be behind Cal and to hold Rayon. Locke did not look at anything else other than Cal's back. He held onto Rayon a little tighter. Boom, boom, boom. Locke could hear his heart beating loudly even in the middle of the deafening battle. He was slowly realizing it. It was happening from deep inside his heart. The feeling was slowly rising up from there, fear and concern. An emotion different than those was rising up as if it would eat up his wildly beating heart. Locke's eyes started to turn red as he watched Cal's back. Cal did not know about this as he poured more power into the shield. He was frowning so much and he did not seem to be doing well. Keheh. Yes, keep defending like that. The bears ruthlessly rammed into the shield as they continued to laugh. Their goal was to stall for time anyway. That was why they were actually thankful that Cal had used his shield to help them stall for time. Your face looks hilarious. The bears could see Cal's neck and uniform becoming wet from his blood. They could also see the serious frown on his face. Of course, Cal was just acting. He was also not wiping the blood off on purpose. He was much better now than when he was bleeding from every orifice during the battle at the Hennetus territory. But the enemy had no way of knowing about this. However, the hundreds of bears in the sky were not just calm. It is not breaking easily. The shield was sturdy as expected. It only shook for a moment, even when hundreds of wings slammed into it. It was similar to a castle wall that was trying to stay firm no matter what. Will it block the bomb as well? Some of the bears suddenly got the chills. Although it was not likely, the fact that Cal had defeated the dragon half-blood made the bears from Arm think about the what-ifs. Of course, Cal had no plan on being a castle wall or keeping this up for a long time. He was just going to stall for time until he reached his limits before making a run for it. The bears who did not know this were thinking that Cal might persist until the end. Some of the bears raised their voices to order their subordinates. Make sure to block the whales no matter what. Boom. Boom. The bears who were flying landed back on the ground. Flame dwarves, bears, and knights got in the way of 3 individuals. They were naturally the 3 whales. It was difficult for bears to defeat whales. Whether it was in weight or strength, they were no match for the whales. However, the bears seemed relaxed compared to the hesitating knights and soldiers of the Indomitable Alliance. The bears quickly shouted the reason that they were relaxed. We are not afraid of whales that cannot go berserk. Bears lived on land. Whales lived in the ocean. That difference was preventing the whales from going berserk. Whales needed water in order to go berserk. Not a small amount of water made from magic, but large quantities of water, such as during a hail, to go berserk. The whales were strong. However, although the whales that could not go berserk made the bears feel fear, they were not in despair. Ha ha ha! The bears could hear the killer whale Archie starting to laugh at that moment. He then slammed his fists against each other. Bang! The sound of bare fists slamming was chilling. Archie's gaze headed toward the hundreds of flame dwarves, bears, and knights in his way. It feels terrible to be ignored by a stupid bear. Archie was known for being a whale with a terrible personality. He leaned on one foot and frowned as he started to speak. You useless idiots. That was all he said. Then he started to move. Archie moved quickly toward the enemies. However, there was someone who was moving even faster than him. Archie sighed while looking at the water whip that was brushing past him. Some people have said that he has a bad personality, however, in Archie's opinion. The royal humpback whale beast people were even worse. Bang! The areas that the 2 water whips went through ended up destroyed, as if a sword master's aura had cut through the area. The shocked knights of the Indomitable Alliance moved back, while the mages activated shields in front of the large container. Defend it no matter what it takes. Just 3 more minutes. One of the flame dwarves shouted as loudly as possible. Uwuong light started to fill up the container even more. Steam then started to appear from the large container with the magic bombs. 2 large containers were pointed at the same spot. They were pointed toward the Breck Kingdom, specifically the shield on their side. 3 minutes. It was a short yet long duration of time. Sizzle, they could hear things starting to burn. The knights of the Indomitable Alliance looked toward the water whips. The whips that had split into 2 were being held by the bears. Ugh! Whales were the strongest of the beast people. The bears who were holding onto the whip of the future whale queen felt as if their palms were being cut by a blade, but they continued to hold on. GRR. GRR. The rough breathing of the berserk bears could be heard as they held onto Watira's whips for dear life. However, someone suddenly appeared between them. To be specific, the person fell onto the bears' heads. The bears immediately let go of the whips and stepped back. Boom! The ground broke as if it was a window from Archie's fist. At the same time, Pazatin's sword used that opening to attack the bears. 2 minutes. The pupils of the flame dwarf that was shouting the time remaining were shaking. Watira was running toward him in a straight line. Bang, bang. When he looked up, the black-haired sword master who used black aura was freely flying in the air with the help of the crows as he killed bear after bear. Ree-ip, ree-ip. The wings were ripped. Ka-ha-ha-ha-ha. The tigers were laughing even though they showed signs of being scratched by the bear's claws. The tigers did not care that their white dojo uniforms were being stained with blood as they rushed toward the bears. They made sure to grab onto a bear and rip their wings off to make them fall into the gorge. The flame dwarf bit down on his lips. They truly were strong. There were too many strong individuals on the enemy side. However, all of this only worked for short battles. Longer battles would always be won by the side with overwhelming numbers. In that case, they just needed to make as long a battle as possible. They needed to destroy the Gorge of Death. "One more minute," the flame dwarf shouted once again. The knights stepped back at that moment. The knights and beginner mages retreated backward, even with the whales rushing toward them. Instead, the ones with the wings blocked against the whales with all they had. The berserk bears were using their numbers to barely hold off the 3 whales. The flame dwarves put on their wings and started to fly. 30 seconds? 30 seconds. The dwarf, calling out the time, prepared to fly up and look to the other side. Cal Henitus, number 1 on the Indomitable Alliance's kill list. He could see Cal barely holding the bears off with his shield. He had already defended against the bears for 5 minutes. It was shocking. However, it would be difficult for him to defend against these bombs. It was because his shield was not large enough to defend the entire gorge. The Gorge of Death was much larger than Castle Leona. They just needed to destroy one spot, then the enemy would fall. 10, the flame dwarf called out as he started to move his wings. Ooh-wong, he could feel the container starting to shake underneath his feet. A heat as hot as what he felt when blacksmithing crawled up his legs. Block it. Activate the defensive magic circles. The flame dwarf could see the movement of Cal's lips. Cal was shouting louder than ever. The flame dwarf scoffed. 2 of the containers were directed toward Cal's shield. 3, the bears who were fighting against the whales kicked off the ground. One of the bears mocked the whales as he flew up. "It looks like you're not so great when you can't go berserk." 2, the flame dwarf's voice could be heard. There should be an explosion in 1 second now. The bear who had mocked their ways suddenly flinched. He could see the whales smiling as he kicked off the ground and flew up. "What the?" He could see the shape of Watira's mouth. "It's not enough. Not enough. What is not enough?" He then saw the whales jumping into the air. They were moving very quickly. They were stepping on crows and using Gashan's wind in order to head up into the sky. The tigers and Choi Han also quickly headed up to the sky. The hundreds of crows all headed up into the sky as well, higher and higher. They kept going higher without looking back. The flame dwarf, calling the numbers out from above the container, kicked off into the air. 1, screech, boom. The direction of the 2 containers changed. The containers that were pointed at the shield were now pointed underneath it. They were headed toward the cliffs that were supporting the Breck Kingdom's forces. The flame dwarf and the middle-grade mages who were near the containers all flew up into the sky. Ooh-ooh-oh, the containers started to make noises. Extreme heat was coming out of them as well. Finally, light shot out from the 2 large containers. "Destroy it, destroy it!" The flame dwarves cheered while looking at the containers. Tens of strands of white light came out of the containers. The numerous magic bombs all poured out toward the cliff. Kahaha, a bridge will end up being created no matter how much you defend. The cliffs would fall from the explosions. The soldiers of the Indomitable Alliance were already far away, outside of the bomb's range. The flame dwarf tribe cheered while watching the tens of white light shooting out of the container. It was at that moment. The silver shield disappeared. At the same time, Cal wiped the blood off of his mouth and said a single word. Attack. Locke's body started to quickly move following behind Cal. The sound of the wind was roaming around Cal's feet. Locke heard the ground rumbling at that moment. Ooh-wong, another loud noise shook the Breck Kingdom's forces. They could see the tens of white light shooting down. One woman reached her hand out toward the lights that held the magic bombs inside them. Tens of mages from 2 mage brigades were behind her with their hands on the magic circle. Tens of highest-grade magic stones created a circle around Rosalind, who was standing at the center of the magic circle. Drip. Rosalind ignored the blood at the corner of her lips as she started to smile. Fire stretched forth. Ooh, a large fire shot out from the magic circle, a fire that looked as if the sun had descended shot forward. To be specific, they were heading toward the tens of white light. What the? Why are they attacking? It will be destroyed. The flame dwarves and bears shouted and noticed the enemies rushing past them and into the air. Choi Han, the tigers, and the whales. They were continuing to move higher up along with the crows and the wind. They continued to head higher up, as if that was the only way to survive. Just what the flame dwarves suddenly got the chills and looked down. The white light and the large fire crashed. Bang, the gorge of death. A loud noise that seemed to be orchestrating death echoed in the area. Ha 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 ha. What do you think, young Master Cal? Rosalind laughed out loud, even with blood on the corners of her lips. She looked toward Cal, who was carrying her and running. Cal used more of the sound of the wind as he pointed behind him. Rosalind raised her head to see what was going on. A large explosion. There was a mix of the white light and the red flames. She then felt the vibrations of the ground. The gorge of death was going to be destroyed. They could not avoid it. However, something that ate up that light appeared from underneath the gorge. Cal stopped moving once he reached the safe zone. He then turned around. He looked toward where the white and red lights had disappeared. He looked toward where the cliff was breaking. Fire was shooting up from deep underneath the gorge of death. Cal recalled a conversation between the ancient dragon, Iruhaben, and the young dragon, Rayon. What color should we make it? Little kid, what color do you like? You mean for the fire? Yes, I am greater than the alchemists, so I can easily change the color of the flame as I wish. The natural powers of fire will not change just because you change the color. Goldie, then make it the majestic black color. It is majestic because it is my color. I don't want to. I'm going to do whatever I want, little kid. Bang, bang, bang. The orbs with the liquid fire started to explode. A large fire absorbed the white and red lights, the gorge of death. It appeared as if death was descending on the gorge. The dark blue fire started to absorb everything else. Ha ha ha. Cal started to laugh. The dark blue fire shot up into the sky as if it wanted to eat up the sky as well. The fire that was the same color as Rayon's eyes started to dominate the gorge. Dragon's Rage. The battle was only just beginning. Chapter 240. I will. You 5. Originally, the gorge of death should have been destroyed from the magic bombs coming out of the large containers. Boom, the cliffs started to break apart. The broken pieces started to fill up the deep gorge. How is this? The knights of the Indomitable Alliance urgently got off of their horses after feeling a rumbling that was beyond what they had expected. They were clutching onto their reins, however. They did not even notice this action as they were at a loss for words while watching what was happening in front of them. This was the same for the people on the Breck Kingdom's side as well. The soldiers who had been running away from the magic bombs quickly got back up after having fallen from the shock of the explosion. That is, from our side, the soldiers could not help but shake at what their allies had done. Their gazes all headed to a single direction as they got back up. They were all looking at Cal and his group. They were the only ones who were looking at this explosion with calm expressions. It was just one part of the gorge of death that was hundreds of kilometers long. Those few kilometers of the gorge were filled with rock and dirt. The Indomitable Alliance's plan succeeded. Rosalind started to laugh even though the enemy's plan had worked. Why? It was because she could see a wall of dark blue fire gulping up the broken area of the cliffs. The dark blue flames glowed in Rosalind's red pupils. Dragons really are amazing. Although her insides were not well because of her overuse of mana, she could not stop laughing. She heard a quiet voice by her ear at that moment. "Miss Rosalind, I'm going to let you down now." Rosalind flinched. She was still being carried over Cal's shoulders. She slightly turned her head. She could see that Cal's arm was shaking. This weak person was realizing that she was being carried by this weak person. Rosalind felt extremely sorry. She quickly got off of Cal's shoulder. She then looked toward him, expecting to see him frowning from being tired. She then flinched again. His extremely calm face was looking toward the dark blue wall of fire. The bridge was blocked. The gorge of death spanned hundreds of kilometers. The enemy's bridge that should have appeared in the middle of the gorge became useless because of the dark blue wall of fire. Of course, the enemy may try to do the same thing at the other cliffs around the gorge of death. However, the dragon's rages that were installed throughout the cliffs would block them each time. Miss Rosalind. Yes, young Master Cal. Now the Mage Brigade can slowly take down the enemies in the sky. Rosalind was already giving orders to the Mage Brigade with her hands and having them prepare long-distance attack magic spells. She continued to speak with a much more relaxed disposition. Have the knights and soldiers line up against the cliffs so that we can detect and prevent the enemies from attempting to do the same thing again. It was now going to be a prolonged battle. Cal's group managed to block the enemy's path, however. It also meant that the Breck Kingdom's side could only attack the other side with magic as well. Although they had strong individuals with them, there were not enough of them to handle hundreds of thousands of enemy soldiers. Furthermore, Rosalind wanted to win while having the least number of casualties as possible. The enemy will end up retreating in a prolonged battle due to a lack of supplies. The North always has a shortage of food in springtime. The Breck Kingdom does not have such issues. We cannot allow that. Excuse me? A rare stern voice answered back. We cannot let it become a prolonged battle. Young Master Cal, Rosalind's heart started to beat faster again. Cal had a relaxed expression on his face, however. There was nervousness in his eyes now. Nervousness. It was a word that did not fit well with Cal. That was why Rosalind was getting worried as well. At that moment, Cal turned away from the dark blue pillar of fire. We need to quickly take care of them. Cal's battle was only just beginning. It was a fight against time from here on. Cal could not stop fighting because of a certain individual. It was someone Rosalind had heard about but not experienced herself. But Cal had experienced his strength before. Cal called forward someone who had been preparing ever since earlier. Mary. The black robe moved toward Cal. The sky had turned dark as night was approaching, now only being lit up by the dark blue light of the wall of fire. That made Cal's red hair stand out. Those things over there. Mary looked toward where Cal was pointing. He was pointing at the winged individuals that were floating around the pillar of fire, looking concerned. Cal gave the order as soon as she looked toward those winged individuals. Get rid of them. Get rid of all of them. Mary, those wings have skeletons on them as well. Ah. Mary let out a gasp. Rosalind was also shocked as she looked at Cal, dead wyvern's bones, a necromancer who can make skeletons move. It was the moment an image was created in Rosalind's mind. The necromancer underneath the black hood started to smile. I understand. Her mechanical voice echoed in the area. At the same time, black threads started to come out of Mary's hands. Flap, flap. A black bone wyvern flapped its wings. It then kicked off the ground and flew up. Cal lifted his head up. Someone fell down from high in the sky and toward the flying black wyvern. Tap. The wyvern's body lightly shook. However, the person who landed on top of it did not shake at all. Choi Han, the black-haired sword master, grabbed onto the wyvern's neckbone as they headed back up next to the dark blue fire. A group of crows flew next to him. The hundreds of crows had created a black road in the sky. It was as if they were creating new ground in the air. One of those crows landed on Choi Han's shoulder. It then opened its mouth, and a familiar voice could be heard. This is Kalnim's order. It was the voice of the tiger shaman, Gashan. The crow was a familiar that was delivering its master's voice, and there was more than one familiar. The tigers in their white dojo uniforms were high up in the air looking down at the dark blue wall of fire. The crows also gave an order to these tigers who were patching up some light wounds. The enemy's wings are all remains of the dead. Destroy all of the wings. Remains of the dead. The tigers properly understood the meaning behind those words. Their gazes headed toward Choi Han and the black wyvern that were flying back up. Caw, caw. The black birds that delivered the orders started to ride the wind and move again. Choi Han followed their movements and flew up before taking out his sword. Clang. Black aura came out of it. Choi Han could see some people moving by him and going down. The three whales smiled at Choi Han before heading toward the ground. He could hear the voice of the killer whale, Archie. A fire made by a dragon is a bit difficult for us. We will take care of the ground. Choi Han responded with a short nod before moving even faster up into the sky. Archie shook his head at Choi Han's vicious appearance. That guy is not normal either. He heard a loud noise as he had that thought. Bang! The black aura cut through the air. Ugh! The flame dwarves' bodies were pushed back. They all looked down at the weapons in their hands. The weapons that were slashed by the aura broke into pieces and fell down. Crackle! The pieces were then gobbled up by the dark blue wall of fire. The black aura was scary, but the flame dwarves were more scared of that wall of fire. How could there be such a fire? A flame dwarf who was holding now just the handle of an axe subconsciously gulped. Their plan had failed. There was a fire where there should have been a bridge. As they were the flame dwarf tribe, they could feel the fierceness of the fire extremely well. Could there be a human who could create a liquid that was filled with such a pure power as this? The flame dwarves were surrounded by an unknown sense of fear. No, it was actually a fear that they knew about. They knew that neither humans, dwarves, beast people, nor elves could create such a pure fire. The existence that could create this fire was someone the flame dwarves feared. However, they could not withdraw. No, we need to do it on our own. We can't live under someone else's rule forever. In order to overcome their fear, in order to escape from someone else's rule, the flame dwarf tribe had already done things that they shouldn't do. They controlled their wings to move again. However, they could not hide the fact that they were shaking in fear. There were less than 30 tigers and the sword master. On the other hand, there were still hundreds of people from the Indomitable Alliance flying in the air. There were still beings that were guarding the flame dwarves. Bang! The bears clashed against Choi Han. You crazy bastards, a pillar of fire. Are you planning on setting the entire gorge of death on fire? One of the bears shouted at Choi Han as he quickly looked around. The flame dwarves seemed to be in shock from the pillar of fire and the ineffectiveness of the magic bombs. This is why slave bastards can never change. The bears were looking at the flame dwarf tribe as if they were trash for claiming that they could get this done but were now being scared. The tigers were bleeding but continued to take down the bears one by one. Crazy bastards. The bear bit down on his lips. There would be the lion tribe on the eastern continent and the bear tribe on the western continent. That was the deal that made them take out the western continent's wolf tribe and the eastern continent's tiger tribe. But how could things get messed up like this? They are also in cahoots with the whale tribe. They were planning on giving the ocean to the mermaids and using them to arm's advantage. However, the whales had messed it all up. He should have known things would go weird as soon as they appeared. However, the bears that finally figured out the flow of things could not stop. The video communication device on his waist shined and delivered the bear tribe's ruler's orders. Fight. Persist. The smart bears could not go against their ruler's orders. He was a mid-level administrator, so they had to listen as he raised his voice and commanded them. Kill the crows first. Make it so that the tigers cannot move freely. A loud noise reached their ears at that moment. Bang! The bear looked to the front. He could see his subordinates fighting against Choi Han's black aura, crazy bastard. The black aura that was shooting up into the sky was similar to the dark blue wall of fire. Contrary to the sword master's gentle-looking face, the black aura was violent and chaotic. The sword master seemed to be purposely letting the aura run wild. He may look gentle, but you can't judge a book by its cover. The bear lightly tapped his fists together. Tang, he could hear the noise of his gauntlets clanking. At the same time, his wings started to move. He rushed toward the center of the battlefield. Bang! His gauntlet smashed into a portion of Wyvern's wing bone. The bear turned his head in order to look at Choi Han. The two of them made eye contact. He smiled at Choi Han before ordering the nearby bears. Destroy the wyvern? It was an airborne battle. The tigers and the sword master were in the same boat. They just needed to get rid of their rides. The bear could see Choi Han lightly biting down on his lips. This must be the right method. The bear's eyes became cloudy as he dodged a black aura coming his way. Ugh! The aura was fast. However, the bears continued to hit the wyvern's body at that moment. Boom, boom, bang! The wyvern skeleton raised its claws and tried to slash at the nearby bears each time. However, it was too slow. The wyvern's claws could not touch the bears other than leaving light scratches on their wings. Kahahaha! You think wings made of metal and bones will break by those stupid claws? The bear laughed at what the necromancer on the ground was doing in order to try to protect the wyvern. However, her actions made the black-haired sword master unable to regain his balance and stumble. It was a 2-for-1 deal for the bears. Who cares if you can use aura? I just need to dodge. The bear dodged Choi Han's aura once more. Yes, the place that this sword master had shown his strength until now was the ground. Well, sometimes the water as well, however, it was never the sky. Although that sword master had fought against the dead guardian knight, Clope, that was when he was riding a dead dragon's bones and not a black wyvern's bones. We are able to move more freely in the air. The bear was certain about this, and this certainty led to a change in his actions. Boom, bang, the wyvern shook. Choi Han could not even use his sword properly because of the shaking, nor could he block the enemy's attacks. Ugh! Choi Han let out a groan. The wyvern continued to twist its body and scratch at the bears with its claws. However, the claws still could not touch the bears other than leaving light scratches. Ha, how fun! I will throw you and the wyvern into the fire that your allies created. The bear was smiling to the point that his fangs were showing. I'm not so sure about that. The bear could hear Choi Han's voice at that moment. At the same time, Mary quietly said something on the ground as well. It's ready. Black light started to come out of the black wyvern's empty eye sockets.